Chapter 80. Amazing. Chun Hao's long-lost voice sounded in his mind, and even this voice could not help but exclaim in admiration. It was indeed shocking that Chun Hao could so easily dive into the incredibly dense moat without using any energy at all. Are you sure you can lock on a Xiao Wu and Murphy's aura? Don't worry. Although I'm weak right now, my senses won't weaken at all. This is my ability to make a living. Don't ask. I can't answer your questions, and I can't. Besides, communicating with you right now takes a lot of effort. The seal on that thing is too strong. Once you control it, you'll naturally understand. It's better for me to use my senses to communicate with you. When Chun Hao wanted to ask the question in his heart, another existence in his mind spoke first. After speaking, Chun Hao clearly felt that their minds were once again cut off. There is only a trace of fluctuation in his mind, just like the fluctuation that guided him forward when he encountered the elixir. Other than that, there was no other aura. That thing, what is it? Is it also something in my mind? Or is it something that sealed this old guy in it? Chun Hao secretly thought. Although the old guy did not answer his question, his words revealed a piece of information that made Chun Hao surprised and helpless. There was no doubt that the old guy was not the only one in his mind. There was a stronger existence that sealed him. If he wanted to uncover the mystery, he had to be really strong. Now it seemed that there was no hope. He could not sense any abnormalities in his mind at all. So how could he understand what was there? Temporarily suppressing the curiosity in his heart, Chun Hao relied on the fluctuations in his mind and quickly dived to the bottom of the moat. His mind was constantly sensing the changes in the pool water. Converging all his energy, he was able to swim like a fish and completely ignore such a terrifying density of the river water. This was also thanks to the carving technique taught to him by his father, which allowed him to use his body as a knife and integrate into everything in the world. At this moment, Chun Hao was like a knife in his hand, finding the life trajectory and texture of the water. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The water rippled slightly as Chun Hao dove deeper and deeper. What shocked him was that with the guidance of the fluctuations in his mind, this small moat was like a bottomless pit. After 1,000 feet, he entered an underwater cave. This cave was like a coiled dragon, twisting and turning as it went downwards towards the city. All the pores on Chun Hao's body had been opened, and he was completely relying on the internal breathing of an expert to absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the water. At first, there was no abnormality, but after entering the underwater cave, Chun Hao was pleasantly surprised to find that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the water became thicker and thicker. This was not even cultivation, but it made Chun Hao feel as if he was cultivating. Strands of spiritual qi of heaven and earth quickly merged into his body with the breathing of his pores and gathered in his dantian. Chun Hao didn't feel any exhaustion at all. Instead, he felt more and more energetic. But when Chun Hao felt as if he was several kilometers closer to the center of the ancient city, and the underground cave suddenly became several times wider, Chun Hao's body, which was swimming forward like a fish, suddenly froze. Crack, crack, hiss. The sound of bones breaking and flesh tearing came from Chun Hao's body. The blood-red water around Chun Hao's body suddenly became deeper. That was Chun Hao's blood. Chun Hao didn't even have time to scream before an incomparably terrifying pressure pressed down on every inch of his body from all directions. Under that irresistible force, Chun Hao clearly felt that his body was collapsing inch by inch. In almost an instant, countless parts of the bones in his body were shattered. His muscles, tendons, and even every single cell felt as if they were about to be squeezed into fine powder. An indescribable pain, in an instant, almost made Chun Hao lose consciousness. If Chun Hao's current appearance was seen by Helian Wuzi and Moue, perhaps they would be scared to death. His body was squeezed tightly and curled up into a ball. His head, arms, legs, and body were all shrunk into a ball, badly mutilated. Could he still live? Using his body as a blade. This was originally not a problem. If it was in the outside world, no matter what kind of thing was placed in front of him, if he didn't comprehend its life, origin, trajectory, and texture, it would be fine if he didn't use his blade. But at this moment, the essence of this mysterious and strange water suddenly changed. Chen Hao simply didn't have time to comprehend its life, origin, trajectory before he was caught in it. How deep was he at the bottom of the water at this moment? The density of this water was so high. What kind of terrifying pressure would it have? What's more, this extremely terrifying water pressure seemed to be filled with an even more powerful energy. Moreover, Chun Hao had converged all of his yuan qi and mental power, completely relying on the life, origin, trajectory, and texture to move forward. Boy, wake up, wake up. Stay awake and gather your strength. The mysterious existence in Chun Hao's mind was terrified to the extreme at this moment. Even he didn't expect such a thing to happen. He only sensed that there was a winding passage under this Xianhuang ancient city that was full of dense world energy. The end of the passage was the core of the ancient city. The world energy there was even more majestic and powerful to the extreme. He was sure that there must be extremely powerful elixirs there. Because of this, he didn't hesitate to communicate with Chun Hao in a weak state and let Chun Hao enter through the entrance he sensed. But he didn't know the specific situation in the passage. When Chun Hao had just jumped into the moat, he felt that he was wrong. Because how could Chun Hao dive into such dense water? But at that time, Chun Hao gave him a surprise, using a method that he couldn't understand to easily dive into the ground. At that time, he was still pleasantly surprised. But now, he was shocked and regretful. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have let Chun Hao come. But it was too late. In a state of panic, he had to gather all of his mental power and shout in Chun Hao's mind like a morning bell. He was very clearly aware that once Chun Hao lost consciousness, then Chun Hao would stay here forever. On the other hand, the opportunity that he'd finally obtained after waiting for countless years with great difficulty would once again become a long wait, and it was very likely that it would be an even longer wait that would never see the light of day. Severe pain and the feeling of being on the verge of death instantly occupied Chun Hao's mind. Chun Hao's consciousness was almost about to collapse in an instant. Without personally experiencing this kind of pain, one would never know how terrifying it was. But Chun Hao's tenacious nerves and strong will to survive made him try his best to maintain the last trace of consciousness at this moment. He didn't lose consciousness and didn't even hear the voice of the mysterious existence in his mind. Because in that instant, he already knew why he was enduring this kind of pain. Comprehension. Comprehension. Only by using the fastest speed to truly comprehend this water that had suddenly changed its nature could he capture its origin, trajectory, and texture. Only in this way could the terrifying pressure around him disappear. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of tendons, bones, and even cells cracking was still ringing in Chun Hao's body. But at this moment his mind was highly condensed. All the pain seemed to have been forcibly removed from his mind. What was left was only comprehension. Heart, and comprehension. Although it sounded long, it was actually just a short moment. But whether it was Chun Hao or the mysterious existence in his mind, this moment was as long as a century. Hiss. Finally, when Chun Hao's body was compressed to the point where it no longer resembled a human and was about to completely collapse, the terrifying pressure finally disappeared with Chun Hao's comprehension. Chun Hao's body that had shrunk into a meatball suddenly stretched out, but it was already unrecognizable. If it wasn't for the relatively tough and valiant meridians that connected it, it was likely that it would have been shattered. Similarly, if it wasn't for Chun Hao's body genes that were completely beyond the scope of a human, it was likely that he would have been completely finished. Even so, Chun Hao only had half a breath left. He had completely lost control of his heavily injured body. Almost all of his bones were broken, and countless parts of his body were torn. His organs were even crushed, and his blood was almost completely drained. Brat, persevere, persevere. You can't die. The mysterious existence shouted again and again. I can't die. I definitely won't die. Chun Hao's remaining consciousness was completely locked onto this comprehension, and he spoke with incomparable determination in his heart. He couldn't control his body, but at this moment, He split a part of his mind to absorb the thick spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the water and fight against the Grim Reaper. P.S. Please recommend us. Please support Dark Mountain. We really don't have enough recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 81. Indescribable pain continuously assaulted him like waves. Chun-Hao not only had to resist this pain that almost drowned him, but he also had to lock onto the origin, trajectory, and texture of the pool water. He also had to use the remaining bit of consciousness in his body to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from the pool water to heal himself. If any of the three parts went wrong, it would mean that Chun-Hao would lose his life here. In fact, if it wasn't for Chun-Hao's abnormal physique, Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui would have already died. However, Chun-Hao's body, which was no longer in human shape, was quietly floating in the pool water, recovering extremely slowly. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. In the past, Chun-Hao's body would recover completely in less than a day. But this time, it took an entire 10 days. Chun-Hao's broken bones, torn flesh, and shattered internal organs were finally restored. Chun-Hao also finally regained control of his body. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The instant he regained control of his body, Chun-Hao suddenly sat cross-legged. The dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the pool water immediately began to flow into his body at a speed 10 times, 100 times faster. Strands of brown light overflowed from his body. This color was obviously much deeper than that of a first-grade martial emperor. Not only that, there was also a pure and condensed spiritual energy surrounding Chun-Hao's body. It slowly merged with the brown spiritual energy and gradually formed a bright protective shield. For the first time, it completely separated Chun-Hao's body from the pool water. Phew! Sensing Chun-Hao's condition, the mysterious existence whose heart was hanging in suspense finally let out a long sigh of relief. Thank goodness, thank goodness. If it was anyone else, they would have been finished. This brat's soul is actually so strong after fusing. It seems that I have to do something for him. His life is far more important than my own recovery. After he becomes strong, it won't be too late for me to recover. As long as he has a conscience, he shouldn't treat me unfairly, right? I am the spirit of the super treasure hunting sword. However, this world seems to be much more powerful and mysterious than I imagined. I'm afraid that only when he has the strength to activate that thing will he have something to rely on. For the time being, I can't let him take risks. Fighting steadily and surely is better than dying prematurely. Bang, bang, bang. The 11th day, when Chun-Hao regained control of his body, he cultivated in the same place for an entire day and finally completely recovered. After surviving a great disaster, one was bound to have good fortune. What made Chun-Hao excited was that, after almost losing his life, his martial cultivation had actually broken through 2 barriers in succession, stepping into the peak of 3rd-rank martial emperor. His mental power had also broken through several barriers in succession, rising to a level that was on par with other cultivators, the peak of 3rd-rank martial emperor. A powerful energy filled Chun-Hao's body and surged violently. This astonishing breakthrough made Chun-Hao unable to suppress the excitement of this soaring power after he finished refining it. In an instant, his 2 palms shot out countless palm shadows around his body. Immediately, the quiet pond water was like a landslide, continuously exploding, and the water surged violently. At this moment, Chun-Hao had already withdrawn from the state of comprehending the tracks and lines of origin energy. He was completely relying on his protective aura to resist the terrifying water pressure. Fusing with the tracks and lines of origin energy was good. There was no loss of energy, and he could do as he pleased. However, at this moment, Chun-Hao was more inclined towards absolute power. Only with absolute power and true strength could he avoid the danger of being on the verge of death again. And only with absolute power could he deal with any sudden changes. After venting for a short period of time, Chun-Hao felt refreshed. The protective aura around his body was extremely strong. The fusion of the origin energy and mental power of a third-stage martial emperor and a third-stage martial emperor had surpassed his own realm by many times. There was no need for Chun Hao to do anything, and he could easily resist the terrifying water pressure that had almost taken his life. However, at this moment, Chun Hao slightly frowned, because the fluctuation in his mind was actually coming from the direction he came from. "Brat, go back. This place is still 100 miles away from the core. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it will be. If this happens again, I'm afraid you'll die." Sensing Chun Hao's state, the existence in his mind had no choice but to communicate with Chun Hao again. "How can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Stop talking nonsense. Since I'm here, there's no reason to go back. Do you want me to waste 10 days? Moreover, I really like this kind of dangerous situation." Chun Hao immediately said firmly. Not only did his voice not have the slightest trace of fear, it was instead shining with strong confidence and excitement. Limit, surpassing one's own limit. Only a true life and death situation was the best way. Chun Hao was able to improve to such a level in 10 days. Who could do it? Chun Hao believed that if it wasn't for this life and death situation, he didn't know when he would be able to reach the third stage martial emperor and martial emperor realm. The martial emperor realm was different from the martial emperor realm. Every level required an extremely large amount of energy, especially Chun Hao's body, which was more special than ordinary people's. It required more energy. How could he improve so quickly just by relying on elixirs and cultivation? Moreover, Chun Hao also felt that after reaching the martial emperor realm, even he would need time to comprehend the barrier. Moreover, the barrier would definitely become more difficult as he progressed. Otherwise, his small cloud province wouldn't be so small. There are countless martial emperors, but only the patriarchs, guests, and elders of the big clans were ninth-stage martial emperors. There wouldn't only be a few martial emperors like Li Ran and Elder Shao. All right, that's your own decision. I'm only the treasure-hunting sword spirit. I can only sense the direction of the treasure through the abnormality of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, I don't know the specific situation. It might be more dangerous later, so you have to be more careful. You're the treasure-hunting sword spirit? Yes. All right, I'm very weak. The treasure-hunting sword spirit immediately hid in the depths of Chun Hao's mind and began to sense and communicate with him again. The underground cave, which had become extremely spacious, now looked like a crystal palace. Huge stone pillars stood in it, like an underwater maze. There were several straight entrances. The original blood-red color of the moat had disappeared, and it became incomparably clear. There was no mud at the bottom of the water, only hard and flat rocks. Relying on the senses in his mind, after moving forward for more than 10 kilometers, a tightly sealed metal gate appeared in front of Chun Hao's eyes. A plaque made of unknown material was hanging on the gate, and it was intact. The 4 big words carved in immortal characters shocked Chun Hao. Xianwang's Secret Land. Xianwang's Secret Land. Xianwang's Secret Land. This must be the foundation of Xianhuang Ancient City. Xianhuang Ancient City is helpful in comprehending the 5 elements spirit root, so it must be closely related to this secret land. Maybe the source of the 5 element spirit root is in this secret land. Chun Hao thought excitedly. At the same time, he activated all the elemental energy in his body and suddenly struck out with his palm. Bang! In the instant that Chun Hao's berserk power struck the metal door, a loud, muffled sound erupted. Suddenly, a dazzling, icy blue light shone from the gate. Hiss! An incomparably swift and fierce force blotted out the sky and covered the earth as it slashed towards Chun Hao. P.S. Thank you for yesterday's 9 friends. Passionate love carrot. Dream is already. Chuan Liang Wuzi, Loki Little Devil, Shu Lin Fei, Yi Mo Rashi, Elbone Ash Bookworm, Shuhing Ing Qian, and Purple Knight Emperor Shu for their support. Note: thank you very much for pointing out Wushan's mistake. Wushan actually left out Wuzong. They never thought of Wuzong until now. Now, Wu Zong is a level between martial emperor and warrior sage, a master of a generation, establishing a sect. I'm not used to it, but I'm sorry. Chapter 82. Boom, boom, boom. Chun Hao was shocked. His eyes suddenly shrank, and his figure retreated quickly. His spiritual force and Yuan Qi were released violently, and he instantly shot out countless palms. Even so, the terrifying blue light that was like sword light still shattered Chun Hao's powerful protective Qi inch by inch. Fortunately, this attack was only one wave. After the blue light disappeared, Chun Hao's body was drenched in cold sweat. He was incomparably shocked. If it weren't for the fact that Chun Hao had experienced the illusory realm, and that the illusory realm was an attack of countless sharp sword lights, just this one attack alone would have shattered him. What a powerful attack. Do you know what's going on? Chun Hao asked in his mind. He knew that although that guy was hiding now, he must be paying attention to him. I don't know, I don't understand these. You don't understand? Weren't you the one who helped me comprehend the true essence of Sword Dao during this period of time? I said, I'm just the sword spirit of treasure hunting. I can only be called the spirit of treasure hunting. I don't understand the true essence of Sword Dao, but it should be that thing. What is that thing? Chun Hao frowned and asked. I can only tell you that it's an ancient spiritual treasure. When you're strong enough, you'll naturally know. Don't ask. However, although I don't understand the mechanism of this door, I know that any mechanism has a way to open it, especially of this nature. Usually, the corresponding energy is used to activate the array. You should study it carefully. Since this is the mysterious yellow secret land, and you have the 5-element spiritual root, I'm afraid you must have a little understanding of the 5 elements. You just happen to have. Mechanisms were no stranger to Chun Hao in the past, and with his intelligence, it was not difficult for him at all. But in the past on Earth, arrays were only a legendary existence. Although Chun Hao had unearthed countless relics, because of the fall of the cultivators on Earth, the lack of spiritual Qi of heaven and earth, and other reasons, there were no arrays in these relics. Even if there were, they had become useless arrays without the slightest power. Chun Hao only needed to think for a moment before he figured out the reason behind it. Whether it was Yuan Qi, spiritual force, or the 5 elements, yin and yang, and other forces, it was nothing more than energy of different attributes and qualities. The operation of any formation required the support of energy, and the power and effect it displayed was a way to use that energy. After figuring this out, Chun Hao carefully approached the door again and began to carefully ponder and try. Chun Hao, who was immersed in the mysteries of formations and mechanisms, did not know how terrifying what he was doing was to ordinary people. Even the ancient expert who left behind the ruins of the Xianhuang ancient city never thought that someone would approach the source of the 5-element spiritual roots in a way that completely went against his original intention. Just as the treasure hunting sword spirit had guessed, after Chun Hao found the key mechanism of the door, he successfully used the mysterious ice qi to break open the door. Then, as he continuously approached the core, he activated countless mechanisms and formations. Needless to say, it was dangerous, but Chun Hao enjoyed it. It was as if he had encountered a difficult problem in the past, painful and happy at the same time, enjoying the joy and excitement of passing the level. Time flowed like water, and in the blink of an eye, an entire month had passed. In the evening, in the area near the east gate of the Xianhuang ancient city, 2 figures were hiding in a remote and dilapidated building complex. Their clothes were stained with blood and mud, and many of them were torn. Even their faces were dark, making it impossible to see what they looked like. One of the figures was sitting cross-legged, holding a large and thick sword with both hands. The sword was full of nicks, and it could be seen from this sword alone that this person must have experienced countless terrifying battles. His slightly trembling body was obviously still seriously injured and was recuperating. The other figure was seated cross-legged. Although her clothes were tattered, they were still unable to hide her graceful and exquisite figure. A faint and faintly discernible icy cold aura lingered around her body. Although her breathing was heavy, it was fine and deep. Her condition was clearly better than the person holding the sword. However, she was still injured. Huff! It was another night. No matter how unwilling the two were, they could not stop the curtain of night from falling. When the aura of the monster beasts quietly filled the air, the two of them exhaled and opened their eyes at the same time. Let's go. In another hour, the monster beasts will appear. We have escaped from Dongfang Jun, but if this goes on, I'm afraid we will die in the hands of the monster beasts. You can't hold on for much longer. Hellion Wuzi's ethereal but worried voice sounded. Her little face was covered in dirt, and only her eyes were still clear, but there was a trace of extreme exhaustion. Where to? Boss asked us to wait here. We have to wait here, Mo Yui said weakly. His injuries were obviously very serious, but his voice was abnormally firm. Why are you as stubborn as a bull? Boss asked us to wait here, but he didn't ask us to die here. The others have all gone to the core area. Although the monster beasts here are the weakest, how can the two of us survive? The monster beasts tonight will definitely be more than yesterday, and stronger. How long can you last? Don't talk nonsense, follow me. It's still not too late. We will go to the area with the most people. So what if Dongfang Jun finds me? I don't believe that he dares to do anything to me in front of the other disciples. Let's go, Hellion Wuzi said coldly. For an entire month, the two of them were only rank 1 martial monarchs. Although their battle prowess was much stronger than ordinary rank 1 martial monarchs under Chunhao's special training, especially Hellion Wuzi, who had comprehended water and ice, she was even more powerful. However, when faced with waves of attacks from monarch-level monstrous beasts, they were not able to withstand them, especially the monstrous beasts that appeared at night. They were getting stronger every night. At this moment, the two of them were already injured, and Mo Yui was even more seriously injured. Okay, but if Boss comes out to find Rumble before Mo Yui could finish his sentence, he and Hellion Wuzi, who were still sitting cross-legged, jumped up in fright at the same time. No, to be exact, it was not that they jumped up, but that they jumped up from the shock. What made them incomparably shocked was that the entire ancient Xuanhuan city seemed to have started to tremble violently, as if there was an earthquake. A low and terrifying rumbling sound came from the depths of the ground, continuous and continuous. What's going on? When the two of them stabilized their bodies, this thought emerged in their minds. In the direction of the ancient Xuanhuan city, an incomparably bright light suddenly gushed out. In an instant, the entire ancient Xuanhuan city was bathed in bright light. The two of them looked at this scene in astonishment, and their minds raced. Before coming to the ancient Xuanhuan city, all the disciples were already clear about the situation of this trial. The ancient Xianwang city contained the 5 elements' spiritual roots. It was a relic that the new disciples of the Royal New Show Hall had to come to every year. Many disciples were able to comprehend one of the 5 elements' spiritual roots and its derivative attributes. This was almost the standard for whether a cultivator could be promoted to martial saint. Emperor level, ancestor level, all things return to the origin, a master of a generation. As long as an expert reached the ancestor level, their origin power and mental power had been cultivated to the extreme. They could create the most suitable secret technique for themselves, establish a sect, and preach to the world. But for the body to reach the sage level, the first condition was to comprehend the 5 elements' energy. Only then could they break through the shackles of the ancestor level and advance to the saint level. Saint-level experts, after comprehending all the 5 elements' energy, would be able to operate the 5 elements and condense all kinds of powerful formations. They would have the unparalleled power to destroy heaven and earth, and the ability to clash with the martial god realm's yin-yang rotation. One could imagine the importance of comprehending the 5 elements' energy. It was also because of this that Hellion Wuzi was chosen by Fang Yuan. And now, the resplendent 7-colored light in the ancient Xianhuang city was the sign of the 5 elements' spiritual roots blooming. When the 7-colored light appeared, The spiritual roots appeared. Please collect, recommend, thank you. Chapter 83. According to the information they obtained, although Xianhuang Ancient City could comprehend the 5 elements, no one had been able to activate the 5 elements spiritual roots in Xianhuang Ancient City. The spiritual roots that occupied the core of Xianhuang Ancient City, known as the Xianhuang Treasury, had never been opened before. And the scene before them was the legendary opening of the Xianhuang Treasury. How could Helian Wuzi and Moue not be shocked? Could it be that someone had opened the Xianhuang Ancient City's treasury? Quick, let's go. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Charge. In an instant, not only Helian Wuzi and Moue, all the new disciples training in Xianhuang Ancient City crazily started to approach the core of the ancient city. Everyone knew what the opening of the Xianhuang treasury meant. Even if they couldn't obtain the 5 elements spiritual roots, as long as they entered the core area of the treasury, they would naturally obtain endless benefits. Even if others ate the meat and they ate the soup, it would still be a huge harvest. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Streams of light flashed as each of them raised their speed to the limit. The experts training in the core area, such as the Fierce Sun Hall's Zhao Yunfei, the Cold Moon Hall's Dongfang Jun, the Cold Star Hall's Bailey family's rank 9 Martial King Bailey Yin, and the Lancang province's Zhuge Qinyan, all of them were abnormally excited as they immediately rushed over. What did the opening of the Xianhuang treasury mean? This was an ancient treasury. More importantly, there were 5 types of spiritual roots: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Every spiritual root contained its basic attribute and derivative attribute. This was a peerless inheritance. As long as one obtained one of them, it meant that one could comprehend the energy derived from that attribute. Moreover, it would be the origin energy, the pinnacle of the 5 elements. Compared to what Chun Hao and Helian Wuzi comprehended in the Origin Spirit Cave and the Heavenly Origin Cave, it was purer and stronger. As for these experts, they were the most outstanding of all the disciples participating in the trial. The 3 great palaces had a total of 1 rank, 1 martial emperor, and 3 rank 9 martial emperors. Even if the strongest Zhao Yunfei managed to snatch 2, Dongfang Jun, Bailey Yin, and Zhuge Qinyan will be able to snatch 1 each. How could they not be excited? Resplendent rainbow-colored lights filled the world like a dream. As all the disciples madly converged towards the core of Xianhuang Ancient City, the aura of the nocturnal monster beasts also became more and more intense. As if they had been enticed by the opening of the mysterious yellow treasure vault, terrifying beastly roars resounded between heaven and earth. The already violently shaking ancient city was suddenly filled with dust and smoke. Bang, 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 bang. The enormous and terrifying demon beasts actually no longer fought with the humans. Instead, they similarly chose to gather at the core of the ancient city. 7 colors were born, and the spirit root appeared. The disciples of the New Show Hall were not the only ones who went crazy. The demonic beasts also went crazy. Humans and beasts had their own paths. This was especially true for demonic beasts that were able to advance to the 5th level, which was the Emperor Realm. Although they were not human, they were still living creatures that cultivated. They all possessed the intelligence of humans. The monster beasts that lived in the ruins of the Xianhuang Ancient City were naturally aware of the value of the Xianhuang treasure vault. Who would give up? Moreover, everyone knew that once the mysterious yellow treasure vault and the 5 elemental spiritual roots were divided, the mysterious yellow ancient city's ruins would completely disappear. Because the foundation that supported and protected the existence of the mysterious yellow ancient city was the 5 elemental spiritual roots in the mysterious yellow treasure vault. Once the spiritual roots disappeared, the ancient ruins would lose its protection and naturally dissipate with the wind, turning into dust. The 7-colored light shrouded heaven and earth. The momentum was terrifying, and the rumbling tremors were still continuing. Everyone desperately increased their speed to the limit. The cultivators who were originally in the core area of the ancient city had already arrived at the center of the ancient city, the huge sealed palace that no one had ever set foot in before. At this moment, numerous figures and countless demonic beasts stood in front of the four gates of the palace. They each formed a camp, but there was no fighting. There was only a burning gaze. They were waiting for the seven-colored light that shrouded the entire palace to disappear. Once the light disappeared, the seal of the palace would be lifted and the mysterious yellow treasure vault would be opened. The core palace, or rather, the mysterious yellow treasure vault, had a total of 5 gates. The east, west, south, and north corresponded to wood, metal, fire, and water. The central palace was for earth, and the earth gate was at the core above the palace. At this moment, under the resplendent seven-colored light, no one was able to reach the earth gate. The 4 gates were where all the humans and demonic beasts gathered. Zhao Yunfei, Dongfang Jun, Bailey Yin, and Zhuge Qingyun had tacitly chosen one of the gates and stood at the very front of the gates. Moreover, no one dared to compete with them, especially Zhao Yunfei, who was a rank 1 martial emperor from the West Gate. His tall and mighty figure emitted a frightening, oppressive might. He wore a long gown and stood with his hands behind his back. His long hair fluttered without wind, and with a slight sweep of his sharp gaze, those who wanted to approach him would all stop their steps. As for Dongfang Jun, who was also standing proudly at the south gate, as well as the 3 people from the Dongfang family, they all had arrogant expressions on their faces as they slowly swept their gazes across the crowd. "All of you, watch carefully." Dongfang Jun lowered his voice and said to the 3 people beside him, "Yes, boss. This time, they'll definitely appear." "That's not certain. Motherfucker, that coward is actually hiding somewhere. If he knows that we're here, perhaps he won't come out." "How could that be? The opening of the Xianwang treasure vault is a great opportunity. I don't believe that they'll be able to endure it. Let's just wait." Dongfang Jun and the others spoke on the ground. In an entire month's time, they had used their fastest speed to rush to the Xianhuang ancient city and waited at the north gate for Chun Hao and the others. However, they didn't see them. After asking several disciples who entered from the east gate, they found out that Chun Hao and the others had used a strange method to enter the city. However, even after an entire month, they still hadn't found Chun Hao and the others. How could they not be depressed? Especially the 2 who had their throats slit by Chun Hao. They were gnashing their teeth in anger. The resplendent seven-colored light didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. After an entire hour, it still didn't weaken in the slightest. At this moment, almost all the cultivators and demonic beasts were surrounding the Xianhuang treasure vault. All of them were impatient. As for Dongfang Jun and the others who were destined to be the first to enter the treasure vault, they anxiously waited while looking for Chun Hao and the others. However, they found nothing. After all, there were 4 gates. It wasn't certain which gate Chun Hao and the others went to, and even if they went to the other 3 gates, they wouldn't be able to see them. It was easy to find them at this moment, but the Xianwang treasure vault was obviously far more important than Chun Hao and the others. Who knew when the treasure vault would open? This was a race against time, and Dongfang Jun didn't want to delay. Half an hour later, 2 figures, who were more miserable than the rest of the crowd, arrived at the east gate. Their faces were black and dirty, their hair was messy, and their clothes were tattered. It was obvious that their injuries were not light, especially one of them. Although one of the figures looked like a little beggar, her graceful and exquisite figure could still be vaguely seen. Her pair of cold eyes were still beautiful. "Junior sister Xiao?" A surprised and pleasantly surprised voice suddenly sounded. "P.S. Please add it to your collection and recommend it. If you haven't added it yet, please add it to your collection. If you have recommended, please support Dark Mountain. It's not easy to write a new book, please. Also, thank you for yesterday's passionate love carrot, bookworm, low-key little demon. Dream is already broken, Luoshi, Daofeng, E.T.U. the Great, G780511, Ton Level Uncle Rabbit, Harmless Donkey, Demon King's Tears, Broken Dreams 88 Worlds, Blood Rain Soul Suppressing Tablet. Sex is more intoxicating than wine. For hidden fragrance, 15 friends have sent their support. Thank you very much. Chapter 84. The ninth grade martial monarch Zhuge Qingyun was currently enjoying the glory and status brought by absolute strength. The handsome and imposing Zhuge Qingyun stood at the front of the east gate of the black-yellow treasury with his hands behind his back. He used his sharp gaze to block the crowd that wanted to approach. The only ones that could stand beside him were the 12 disciples from the Lansong province who had followed him into the Cold Star Palace. He was paying attention to every figure in the crowd, especially the ones that had just arrived, because he was also looking for the beautiful figure that had moved his heart. Although she didn't follow him to the Cold Star Palace, he would still encounter her when the three palaces were training together. Unfortunately, he didn't find her in this 1 month. However, he didn't give up, especially since the black-yellow treasury was about to open. He believed that Chun Hao and the other two would definitely come. If they could come to the East Gate, that would naturally be the best. When Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui's figures appeared in his eyes, he slightly frowned, especially when he saw the pair of beautiful and cold eyes. He cried out in shock. "Quick, come to senior brother. How did you end up like this?" Zhuge Qingyun asked with concern. He didn't care about the gazes of the surrounding crowd. "Little Mo, I already told you to follow senior brother into the Cold Star Palace, but you didn't listen. Little Wu, are your injuries serious?" "Serve them right. They asked for it. Senior brother Qingyun is so good to her. Look at her. Isn't she just a little beautiful? How is she worthy of senior brother Qingyun?" That's right. When Zhuge Qingyun actually went straight for Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui. The two female disciples who also came from the Lansong province revealed jealousy in their words as they spoke in a low voice. "It's fine, thank you," Helian Wuzi said. She and Mo Yui were still recognized by Zhuge Qingyun in this state, which was out of their expectations. Although Helian Wuzi knew that Zhuge Qingyun had feelings for her, she couldn't say anything about it. After all, Zhuge Qingyun wasn't like Dongfang Jun who forced and threatened her. "Oh, where's Chun Hao? Why isn't he with you?" After entering the city, he separated from us to train, Helian Wuzi casually said. Even she and Mo Yui didn't understand what Chun Hao was going to do. He only knew that Chun Hao had discovered something unusual. This kid is too outrageous. Zhuge Qingyun lightly frowned as he spoke. He knew very well that the reason Helian Wuzi didn't choose the Cold Star Hall was because of Chun Hao, and he was naturally displeased in his heart. "All right, junior sister Xiaowu, little Mo, the dark yellow treasure vault is about to open. Both of you follow by my side. With me here, no one will dare to fight for the East Gate with you. No need. Let's go find boss." Before Helian Wuzi could speak, Mo Yui said with a cold expression. Glancing at Helian Wuzi, she took the lead and turned to walk towards the other door. Helian Wuzi waved her hand at Zhuge Qingyun and followed Mo Yui without any hesitation, leaving behind an embarrassed Zhuge Qingyun. Boss? Chun Hao actually became their leader? Zhuge Qingyun's brows were tightly locked as he looked at the back view of the two of them, leaving without any hesitation. He didn't feel good in his heart. He really didn't understand what was wrong with him. Although Chun Hao's talent was astonishing, was he bad? Especially now, his strength was much stronger than Chun Hao. Furthermore, Chun Hao was only 13 years old. Although he had a steadiness and maturity that surpassed his peers, why did Mo Yui and Helian Wuzi place such a little brat as their center? Little Mo, isn't it good to follow them? He's not bad, not good. He has thoughts about you and has opinions about boss. Mo Yui said directly. After a slight pause, he looked at Helian Wuzi and continued. I can feel that the one you like is boss. Therefore, we can't accept his kindness. What nonsense are you talking about? Helian Wuzi's beautiful eyes suddenly glared as she spoke angrily. Her little face felt hot. Fortunately, her face was full of stains. Otherwise, who knew how red it would be? He's a bastard, a 13-year-old brat. How can I like him? Mo Yui grinned, which was a rare sight. He glanced at Helian Wuzi and directly changed the topic. Could Boss be here? Hellion Woozy glared fiercely at Moe, but after a moment, she put away the intention to debate and said, "No, if he comes out, he will definitely come to us. He should still be at the bottom of the river. Then you walk behind me. Let's hurry to the other gates, and don't meet Dongfang Jun and the others." Moe said, This seven-colored light seems to contain a magical power. I feel that my injuries are recovering faster. What about you?" Hellion Woozy asked. "Me too. This should be the power of the 5 elements' spiritual roots. Let's go. Let's find an entrance and recover before the treasury opens." An hour later, the resplendent rainbow-colored radiance finally began to slowly weaken. The crowd and beasts that had long since become impatient instantly became restless. They all approached the 4 gates, and even Zhao Yunfei and the other experts were unable to completely stop them. The tremors and roars from the ground also gradually subsided as the 7-colored light weakened. When the 7-colored light that shrouded the entire sealed palace completely dissipated, the closed gates suddenly rumbled open to both sides. "It's open, let's go." Boom, 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 whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, the figures of both humans and beasts seemed to have gone crazy. In an instant, Yuan power erupted violently. Countless figures mustered all their strength and transformed into streaks of flowing light that swiftly charged into the treasury. Zhao Yunfei, Dongfang Jun, and the other masters immediately turned into streams of flowing light and rushed directly to the core of the palace. Although they wanted very much to take all the treasures in the entire palace, it was obviously impossible. Therefore, they could only aim for the most important 5 elements' spiritual roots. As for the disciples with weaker cultivations, the moment they entered the treasury, they scattered in all directions. They wanted the meat, but they were destined to not be able to obtain it. Therefore, searching for other treasures and spiritual herbs was the most practical choice. Even Hellion Woozy and Moe had the same idea. No way. The moment they entered the treasury, everyone was shocked. From the outside, this sealed palace was only a giant palace that was 1 kilometer long and wide. But after entering, it was like a different world. Looking up, it was gray and hazy. They couldn't see the top at a glance. And inside the palace, there were countless small palaces, which were unimaginably huge. It was simply like a huge city. How is this possible? How did it become like this? Most of the people were naturally shocked. They couldn't imagine how a small palace could become such a huge city. But the disciples of the 3 major families of the Jinyuan kingdom, Zhao family, Dongfang family, and Bailey family, became abnormally excited. Space law. The palace of this black-yellow treasure vault actually contained the space law that only the martial gods who had transcended the 5 elements and jumped out of yin and yang could condense, turning a foot into the horizon, condensing a square inch into heaven and earth. What did this mean? It meant that the value of this black-yellow treasure vault was far beyond their estimation. It meant that they would gain even more. No one knew that in the underground palace under the black-yellow treasure vault, a figure was sitting cross-legged. His entire body was shrouded in an extremely thick 7-colored light. When the black-yellow treasure vault opened and the 7-colored light disappeared, this figure was still shrouded in a thick 7-colored light. No one would have thought that this figure was the source of the 7-colored light. It was only at this time that the 7-colored light that seemed to be emitted from his body slowly weakened and dissipated. After a few minutes later than the outside world, the moment the 7-colored light completely disappeared, the space around him suddenly distorted. Then, his figure disappeared without a trace. Please recommend. Thank you. Chapter 85. Outside the mysterious yellow treasure vault. While everyone was madly rushing into the mysterious yellow treasure vault, no one noticed that just after they rushed in, the space outside the mysterious yellow treasure vault suddenly fluctuated slightly, and then a figure quietly appeared. This figure was Chun Hao, who had sneaked under the ancient city for a whole month. 1 month, for a whole month, Chun Hao could be said to have paid a price that ordinary people could not imagine. Now that he thought about it, Chun Hao felt a sense of relief and a little fear. Fortunately, he came out alive. After obtaining the most precious thing in the mysterious yellow ancient city, he was teleported out of the underground palace by a mysterious array and arrived outside the mysterious yellow treasure vault. The mysterious yellow treasure vault? Chun Hao's dark eyes flashed with a faint seven-colored light, and his handsome face shone with a trace of excitement as he said in his mind, "Where are Xiaowu and Xiaomao? Guide me." Okay. The treasure-hunting sword spirit's voice carried a trace of excitement and said in Chun Hao's mind. This time, Chun Hao's harvest was undoubtedly huge, but the treasure-hunting sword spirit's harvest was not small either. At least after his divine soul absorbed the residual world energy underground, his spirit was condensed and strengthened by more than 100 times. With the treasure-hunting sword spirit's words, suddenly a fluctuation similar to the time when he found the elixir clearly appeared in Chun Hao's mind. Chun Hao's figure flickered and suddenly rushed to the north gate of the treasure vault as fast as lightning. Whoosh whoosh. Although Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui were bathed in the seven-colored light and only had more than half an hour to heal, they had already recovered to their peak state. The moment the two of them rushed into the treasury, they were similarly incomparably shocked. However, they did not delay and used their fastest speed to choose a direction and rushed over like lightning. With such a huge space, even if they were not strong, they would most likely be able to obtain a great harvest. After a while, when they saw that the crowd had chosen a small palace and started to break down the doors, the two of them didn't get greedy and continued to go deeper. They also arrived in front of a small palace. There were two huge stone doors, emitting a cold aura. In the end, the two of them chose to enter through the north gate. The entire area seemed to be shrouded in mist and ice. Clearly, the entire treasury was divided according to the energy pattern of the 5 elements. Ah, what a powerful restriction. Everyone, let's work together to break it. Hearing loud shouts from afar, Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui knew that the huge stone door in front of them definitely couldn't be opened that easily. But what made the two of them pleasantly surprised was that when Helian Wuzi brandished her slender jade-like palm, gathered all of her strength, and slammed her palm onto the stone door, there was actually a loud rumbling sound, and the door was easily broken open. A thick and cold heaven and earth spiritual chi immediately rushed towards him. The aura of black ice chi. Helian Wuzi's mind trembled slightly, and she immediately took the lead to rush in. Ah, what is this? What made Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui, who was shivering from head to toe, surprised was that the floor of this small palace was actually covered with mysterious runes. In the middle of the runes, there were 8 ice crystal-like balls that emitted traces of blue light and were only the size of dates. The 8 balls were arranged in a very regular circle. In the middle of them hung an ice-blue, jade-like object. What a powerful energy fluctuation! Mo Yui, who was shivering from head to toe from the cold, said with a trace of surprise and excitement. Ever since Chun Hao reminded him to resist the cold aura, no matter how cold it was, this guy didn't use any elemental power to resist anymore. It should be a very high-grade elixir. Helian Wuzi also said excitedly. The two of them stared fixedly at the elixir and jade-like objects that were emitting powerful energy fluctuations. They almost didn't dare to believe that such a small palace that was so easily broken open actually had such precious things. Although the two of them didn't know what the balls and jade-like objects were, they knew that their value was definitely higher than a level 6 elixir. Seeing such precious things for the first time, how could the two of them not be shocked? Bang, bang, bang. Quick, the door is open. At this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps and voices could be heard, waking up the two people who were still in shock. Quickly put them away. Someone's coming. Mo Yui said with a trace of panic. Helian Wuzi, who was in front, immediately put the 8 elixirs and jade-like objects into her bosom. When Helly and Woozy just put them away, a few people had already rushed in. After seeing Moe and Helly and Woozy, the youth in the front immediately frowned. Then his face flashed with a trace of excitement and arrogance, and said, "You two, hand over the treasures you've collected." The two of them made a total of 4 people. The leader's body flashed with boundless brown elemental power. Clearly, he was a level 4 Martial King or higher. The other 3 people's auras were slightly weaker, but clearly they were also level 3 Martial Kings. As the leader spoke, the other 3 people already blocked the entrance of the palace. "This is the stone door that we broke open. Why should we give it to you?" Moe immediately said coldly. "Why? Because we're stronger than you. The strong are respected. Our Royal New Show Hall has never prohibited fighting during the trials. If you're strong enough, of course it's yours. But it's ours now. Don't waste time. Obediently hand it over." Boom, boom. Helly and Woozy and Moe looked at each other and crazily gathered their auras at the same time. In an instant, Helly and Woozy's body emitted an extremely cold elemental power fluctuation, while Moe's aura was like an incomparably sharp sword. Seeing the two's appearance, the youth in the front frowned slightly. Earlier, he had already sensed that the 2 people in front of him were covered in dirt and their auras were far weaker than theirs. But at this moment, after the 2 burst out without holding back, his gaze focused. Immediately, he carefully looked at Helly and Woozy and said, "You two are Helly and Woozy and Moe, personally selected by President Fong Yuan of Lansong Province?" Back then, Chun Hao, Helly and Woozy, and Moe were the last to choose their palaces, and Huang Qi had even specially introduced them. Thus, the disciples of the 3 palaces basically all knew Helly and Woozy. If not for Helly and Woozy's current appearance being so terrible, perhaps everyone would have recognized her. So what if we are? So what if we aren't? Moe coldly said. Hee. Fighting with a beauty is indeed not good. But you're clearly a dish that I can't eat. It doesn't matter. Our new show hall has never prohibited fighting. What's more, as the leader spoke, a trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes, and he coldly said, "Close the door." Boom, boom. The other 3 immediately closed the stone door as fast as lightning. At this moment, that guy continued, "Even if we kill you, no one will know. It seems like you have to die too. Helly and Woozy, haha. Although snatching your things doesn't violate the rules of the new show hall, you're now a famous beauty in our new show hall. How many people are drooling over you? Haha. If you become some chief disciple's woman in the future, we won't be able to bear the consequences. Don't worry, I'll very gently kill. Shameless. Fight it out with them." Helly and Woozy and Moe attacked almost at the same time. Even they didn't expect the other party to be so vicious and vicious. Especially Helly and Woozy, who was both ashamed and furious. Femme fatale. Was she really the femme fatale mentioned by Chun Hao? Why didn't she meet any good people? If she was just an ordinary-looking girl, they would at most snatch her things and wouldn't be so ruthless. Berserk ice energy and sharp sword light attacked these 4 shameless people as fast as lightning. So what if they were 3rd grade and 4th grade Martial Kings? They originally didn't intend to give in. At this moment, not only did these 4 people want to snatch the treasure, they also wanted to kill them. Other than fighting with their lives, what else could they do? Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, Helly and Woozy and Moe were surrounded by the 4 people and fought together. Although the 2 of them had undergone Chun Hao's special training and their battle strength had increased tremendously, and they also had the ability to challenge those of a higher level. Facing 4 experts who were 2 or even 3 grades higher than them, they were completely suppressed in an instant. The feeling of approaching death enveloped the 2 of them. P.S. Please add, recommend, thank you. Thank you to yesterday's passionate love carrot. A dream back to old scenes, Sakura dance. A startling image comes in a dream. A dream is already in a dream for their support. Chapter 86. Helly and Woozy's extremely cold and delicate shouts continued. Mo's low and deep roars were like that of a ferocious beast. Although the two of them were already completely suppressed, their gazes became more and more cold and fierce. Their fighting spirit also became stronger and stronger. This made the four people who were clearly stronger than the two of them feel extremely shocked. Hellion Wuzi's graceful and exquisite body was like a weapon from head to toe. She was incomparably fierce and had no scruples at all. She was completely fighting without regard for her life. Mo's sword light was direct, violent, and fierce. He actually completely gave up on defense and only attacked. Every sword was aimed at the vital points. The two of them looked like they were possessed by a demon. A battle is a battle. At any moment, you have to maintain the calmest mind. In the shortest time, you have to make the most accurate judgment and launch the most appropriate attack. The more dangerous the situation, the calmer you have to be. There are no rules in a battle. There are only victory and defeat and life and death. Many people don't have the courage to try and also won't think of such a method. I don't want you to try it easily, but you have to have this courage and thinking. Especially when facing a life and death situation, you have to have the courage to cut off your wrist. Using small to win big is success. It may seem insignificant, but this glimmer of hope may be your chance of survival. In front of absolute power, everything is fleeting clouds. But in front of similar power, skill can allow you to overcome 1,000 caddies with little effort. Not only do you have to get used to my whimsical and even shameless way of attacking, you also have to learn it. Any weakness of human nature can be exploited to the extreme. The unreasonable are afraid of the reckless. The reckless are afraid of the reckless. Pay attention to momentum. At any time, you can't lose momentum. When you risk your life spirit to suppress the opponent's momentum, you will discover that there is an unexpected effect. The enemy is just a paper tiger. No one knew that at this very moment. Hellion Wuzi and Moe, these two people, who had once enjoyed Chun Hao's cruel and torturous special training for more than a month, finally displayed strength that completely surpassed their realm. Chun Hao repeatedly emphasized the training content to them. It was as if it was ringing in their minds all the time. It made the two of them forget about life and death, forget about honor and disgrace. There was only one obsession in their hearts, and that was to defeat the vicious villain in front of them. This was their only chance of survival. Poof! Bang! A rank 3 Martial King's berserk origin power landed squarely on Moe's shoulder. In an instant, Moe was sent flying like a kite with its string cut. However, the instant Moe was sent flying, scarlet blood shot out from his throat under the terrified gaze of that rank 3 martial monarch. A swordsman never leaves his sword. But Moe forcibly used his body to bear the force of the opponent's palm, and threw out the sword that he used as a perfect lover, cutting the opponent's throat in one strike. Roar! When Moe fiercely hit the wall and fell to the ground, he actually let out a beast-like roar. He completely disregarded the fact that he could no longer lift his body and crazily rushed up again. Fourth brother. The other three could never have imagined that one of them would actually die. They had died at the hands of 2 rank 1 martial monarchs. At this moment, while they were terrified, they were also completely enraged, especially the rank 4 martial monarch in the lead. In an instant, he raised his origin power to the limit. The resplendent brown light turned into countless terrifying palm images, fiercely slapping towards Moe, who was charging at him like a wild beast. Little Mo, Hellion Wuzi instantly cried out. She was very clear why Moe was so crazy just now. Because if Moe had not suddenly attacked at all costs, the one who would have been seriously injured or even killed would have been Hellion Wuzi. And now, Moe was crazily rushing over again. Also to help her out of this situation. Die. All of you must die. Following the rank 4 martial monarch's angry roar, Hellion Wuzi's eyes widened in fright. She even forgot about the 2 people who were attacking her. Her expression was lifeless. She knew that for her sake, Moe was probably, it was over. Boom. Suddenly, at this moment, a terrifying roar came from the stone door that had been closed. Rubble flew everywhere as a figure rushed in like lightning and blocked in front of Moe, sending out a palm strike. At the same time, Moe's crazily rushing figure seemed to have crashed into layers of waves, causing him to be unable to release any power and was forced to stop. What shocked him was that the power did not harm him in the slightest. Idiot dodge. A light shout came from that figure's mouth. At the same time, a swift and fierce blade light suddenly shot out from his hand like lightning. No one could see his movements clearly. Boom! Just as the incoming person's palm power collided with the rank 4 martial monarch's attack, that swift and fierce blade light streaked across the sky, leaving behind a beautiful afterimage, attacking the other 2 people who were attacking Hellion Woozy. Poo-pee-you. 2 spurts of blood splashed out, and that rank 4 martial monarch was like a kite with a broken string, flying out with a speed even faster than Moe's. Before he even hit the wall, that cold blade light seemed to be alive. Agile, faintly discernible, but as fast as lightning, it strangely turned in the air and once again slashed across the rank 4 martial monarch's throat. Everything was like lightning sparks. That shout of "Idiot! Dodge!" made the dazed Hellion Woozy float to the side without any hesitation. When her footsteps stopped, the place where she was originally standing already resounded with a violent explosion of origin power. But everything ended here. The battle situation changed in an instant. Are you stupid? What did I say to you? Being stupid and distracted in the middle of a battle? How many lives do you have? Chunhao scolded as he pointed at Hellion Woozy, whose expression was full of surprise and excitement. Just as he finished scolding, he turned to look at Moe. Are you an idiot? I said to let you know how to injure yourself, but I didn't say to use death to kill the enemy. You rushing like this, is it to save her? Look at her stupid and idiotic appearance. Boss, Moe acted as if he didn't hear Chunhao's scolding. His expression was emotional as he looked at Chunhao, who was like an immortal flying from the heavens, who arrived just in time before he died. Hellion Woozy opened her mouth to speak. What about me? Chunhao seemed to be very angry. His eyes were full of anger as he looked at the 2 people. But looking at Hellion Woozy's black face, which was about to cry, he didn't continue scolding. After a slight pause, he said, Come with me. Chunhao grabbed Hellion Woozy with one hand and carried the seriously injured Moe with the other. He rushed out of the palace as fast as lightning. A life for a life. This was the rule of the Royal New Show Hall. Even if Chunhao and the other 2 were acting in self-defense, it would still be troublesome if they were discovered. Moreover, they couldn't explain it clearly. Hellion Woozy was pulled by Chunhao. She didn't need to use her own strength, nor did she have time to use her strength. She felt as if she had turned into a cool breeze. Her speed was astonishing, but she was graceful and silent. Her beautiful eyes contained a trace of sparkling and translucent light. She stared at the figure slightly in front of her. Her heart was filled with grievance, gratitude, and surprise. She hadn't seen him for a month, and his strength had actually increased to such a level. A 4th-grade martial emperor was directly sent flying by him. Moreover, he used that strange and stunning blade strike. It was as if it was easier than killing chickens, and he directly took care of the 3 strong enemies who were about to take her and Moe's lives, and Moe, who was held horizontally by Chunhao, was even more shocked, happy, and ashamed. He was shocked that his boss's strength had actually become so valiant. He was happy that a vigorous energy, which was completely different from Yuanli, was pouring into his dantian from Chunhao's palm. He was ashamed that he didn't do it well enough. P.S. Brothers and sisters who have finished reading, please help to recommend this to your collection. Thank you. Chapter 87. Please add recommend. Thank you. Men die for wealth, birds die for food. If those 4 fellows only wanted to steal things, then it would have been fine. But because they were afraid of Hellion Woozy's revenge after climbing up to a higher branch, They wanted to kill her, to silence her. But in the end, at the moment when they were about to succeed, they didn't even know what was going on and died without knowing who killed them. Chunhao brought Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui. Like a ghost, they quickly distanced themselves from that troublesome place. After confirming that they weren't discovered by anyone, his taut face finally relaxed. He found a secluded corner and let out a long sigh of relief. He released the two of them. With a cold face, he unquestionably said, "Sit cross-legged. I'll help you heal your injuries." As he spoke, Chunhao stretched out his hands and pressed on Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui's vital points. Vigorous and majestic Yuan power seemed to contain a trace of strange energy, and it surged into the two people's bodies. Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui wanted to say something, but they could only shut their mouths. A trace of gratitude flashed in their eyes, and they slowly closed their eyes. They knew very well how precious time was now. When the black-yellow treasure house opened, who wasn't desperately searching for treasures? But Chunhao didn't even frown and used his own Yuan power to help them heal their injuries. What shocked the two of them even more was that under the control of Chunhao's origin energy that contained a strange energy, the two of them noticed that their injuries were actually recovering at an extremely shocking speed, and it was a few times better than the effects of the rainbow-colored light from before. Let's go. In a short 10 minutes, Hellion Woozy, who was lightly injured, had completely recovered. Mo Yui, except for the bone fracture in his left shoulder, had basically recovered. At least his movement was no longer hindered. At this moment, Chunhao let go of the two people and said directly, although the two people had a lot of questions, they knew that this wasn't the time to ask. Plundering the treasures was the most important thing. Bang, bang, bang. "This is ours. Who dares to snatch it?" Roar. The sound of chaos could be heard everywhere. People were fighting with each other, and people were fighting with beasts. Because of the discovery of the treasures, it completely intensified and broke out. Small teams of similar strength fought until their heads bled. Crazy and chaotic. With such a huge treasury and countless palaces, it was reasonable for everyone to be busy with their own business and make a fortune. There was no reason for them to start fighting over the treasures before the doors of many palaces were even broken open. The reason was simple. The gates of these palaces all contained extremely powerful restrictions. Breaking the restrictions seemed to require a lot of strength and luck. So many people had no choice but to team up temporarily. When they discovered that someone had broken into the palaces, they would rush in like a swarm of bees. It was also because of this reason that Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui were robbed. Passing through the noisy crowd, Chunhao led the two of them straight into the depths. Just a little deeper, it's not too far away. In Chunhao's mind, treasure-hunting sword spirit, whose soul had been greatly restored, did not completely conceal itself. Instead, it occasionally spoke in Chunhao's mind. He sensed the location of the palace with greater fluctuations and guided Chunhao. Although the black-yellow treasury was nothing compared to the treasury that treasure-hunting sword spirit had seen before, it was different now. The master had become Chunhao, a brat who had just made his debut. It could be said that he was poor. This mysterious yellow treasure vault was undoubtedly an incomparably huge fortune. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Chunhao finally brought the two of them no longer deeper and came to the door of a huge palace. As they approached the door, Mo Yui and Hellion Woozy discovered that this door was actually a blue crystal that emitted a cold light. It was obviously much stronger than the door they broke open. There was no need to guess. There must be more treasures inside, and they must be stronger. Chunhao stopped, and his eyes shone with a bright light. He stared for a moment, and then he exhaled and slapped a mysterious rune on the giant door. Bang! Streaks of icy blue light shone from the door. Chunhao's figure retreated rapidly, but he suddenly closed in again and continuously struck out with his palms. Bang, bang, bang. When Chunhao slapped the ninth palm, the icy blue light emitted by the rune became incomparably strong and began to tremble violently. Finally, with a kacha sound, it burst open. Rumble. Following the explosion of the rune, the thick and heavy ice crystal door finally slowly opened. A strong energy fluctuation suddenly rushed out. Just this aura alone made Hellion woozy and Mo Yui shocked. "Let's go." Chun Hao stepped in, and it was as if he had entered a world of ice crystals. Inside the palace, icy blue light was emitted everywhere. The four walls, the roof, and the floor were covered with all kinds of mysterious runes. There were hundreds of jujube-sized balls. Some were icy blue and crystal clear, some were lighter in color, and there were faint ripples of water. There were also some that contained a grayish, smoke-like energy fluctuation. Each of them was fixed at the core of the rune. And in the center of the palace, there was a fist-sized emerald green ball floating in the air, emitting a blurred and dreamy light. Quickly collected, water, ice, and fog energy condensed into elixirs. The water crystal in the middle is priceless. The treasure-hunting sword spirit said excitedly in Chun Hao's mind. Quickly collected. Chun Hao immediately said to Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui. As he spoke, he took the lead and activated an invisible mental strength between his eyebrows. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the three figures flashed quickly and collected the elixirs one by one. In just a few breaths' time, they had collected all the elixirs. Boss, 18 elixirs, 26 elixirs, a total of 108 elixirs and 1 water crystal. At this time, Chun Hao's mouth revealed an excited smile and said, "Collect them all first. Let's go." The three of them moved at lightning speed. Under Chun Hao's strange and powerful energy, the doors didn't pose any difficulty at all. They began to loot the treasury as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Moreover, Chun Hao seemed to know which palace had the highest value. Every time, he would go straight to the main palace. There were even some palaces that seemed huge, but he didn't stop at all. As the harvest increased, Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui's eyes were filled with excitement. The bags made of special materials that they received from the Royal News Show Hall gradually bulged up. This made the two excited people worried like nouveau riche. Even when they were running, they covered their bags as if they were afraid that someone would find them and rob them. Bang, bang, bang. How can this seal be so powerful? While Chun Hao and the others were crazily plundering, at the core of the mysterious yellow treasury, there was a huge palace that looked like the entire mysterious yellow treasury. It had 5 doors, and anyone could see that this was the most important part of the mysterious yellow treasury. After entering the mysterious yellow treasury, they didn't stop at all. Zhao Yunfei, Dongfang Jun, Bailey Yin, and Zhuge Qingyun, who rushed over, were burning with anxiety. With the strength of the 4, naturally, no one dared to compete with them for the 5 elements' spiritual roots. What made the 4 even happier was that even some powerful demonic beasts didn't come over. However, at this moment, an entire hour had passed. The 4 martial emperors and their followers had used all their strength, but they were unable to break open the door to the core palace. Even Zhao Yunfei's group of martial emperors could not do it. They felt as if they could not even budge the door a little bit, thinking about how the others were harvesting the treasures while they still didn't get anything. Who wouldn't be anxious? What was going on? P.S. If you have finished reading, please help me recommend this. Thank you. Thank you for yesterday's passionate love carrot. Tomorrow after Omagri to Hen, vegetable bun 55555, wicked young master, naughty watermelon, dream is all ready. CWJ88 for your tips. Thank you. Chapter 88. Please recommend me. Thank you. After 2 whole hours, the 4 parties had no choice but to work together to break the door. But the result was still tragic. They were already impatient and finally didn't want to waste any more time here. They turned their target to the countless small palaces. The water attribute area is almost done. Let's go to the other areas. When the 4 of them started to loot the small palaces, Chun Hao's group had already opened more than a dozen of the more valuable palaces in the water attribute area. Although there were still quite a number of valuable palaces, they were all occupied by beasts and crowds. Chun Hao decisively chose to give them up. After all, until now, They had only obtained water attribute spirit herbs. They had not obtained anything from the central earth attribute and the other three gold, wood, and fire attribute spirit herbs. The three of them ran all the way. Probably because of excitement, Hellion Woozy and Moe ran much faster than usual and followed closely behind Chun Hao's pace. 6 hours later, the sky was slightly bright. Chun Hao, Hellion Woozy, and Moe's bags were bulging with excitement. The bountiful harvest was far more than the others. After a whole night of plundering, even if the restriction was difficult to open, it couldn't withstand the madness of everyone. The huge Xianhuang treasure vault, except for the area near the core palace, was almost completely plundered. Everyone also began to gather in the core area, not to compete with the experts they couldn't resist. It was no problem to watch the fun. And at this moment, almost everyone had more or less gained something, so they were very vigilant and tried their best to go to lively places with more people to avoid encountering evil schemes. And those powerful demonic beasts seemed to be restricted by the laws of Xianhuang ancient city. When the sky brightened, they had no choice but to quickly rush out of Xianhuang ancient city. The restriction of the core palace has indeed loosened. Just when Chun Hao and the other two couldn't find anything to gain, the voice of the treasure-hunting sword spirit sounded in Chun Hao's mind. It loosened? Chun Hao smiled slightly, and his face shone with a touch of confidence. Yes, you're really amazing, kid. How did you know that the restriction of the core palace will only loosen when all the palaces are broken? Do you think I've been relying on luck for the past month? Although the formations of all the palaces here are self-contained, they are also connected. Although I haven't figured out the mysteries of the formations yet, I can still see that. I can sense that there are several good treasures in the core palace. What treasure? Chun Hao asked. Or 5 elements Spirit Dan and Spar? No, it's a few spirit treasures. Although they're very ordinary, at least they're not bad for the current you. They're worth more than the sum of the 5 elements spirit herbs you've obtained. Are you sure? Chun Hao's eyes lit up. Of course. How could the treasure-seeking artifact spirit's detection be fake? You're not thinking of going, are you? Nonsense. Don't tell me you don't want me to go. Ahem. I didn't want you to go. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I don't want you to blame me if you find out that someone else has obtained an enormous treasure. Although your strength has increased tremendously, the disparity between your strength and that of a rank 9 martial monarch is still too great. Your flying dagger that can instantly kill a rank 4 martial monarch probably won't even be able to break his protective aura. So what if I can't break it? Do you think a rank 9 martial monarch can kill me? That's not possible. Then why are you still talking nonsense? After Chun Hao finished speaking in his mind, he looked directly at Hellion Woozy and Moe and said, Let's go to the core area to take a look. Hellion Woozy and Moe were both shocked. What? We'll act according to the circumstances. After the core palace of the treasury opens, this trial will end early. Even if Dongfang Jun is extremely daring, he won't dare to do anything to us in front of so many disciples. Besides, I'm not afraid of him. Boss, what rank have you advanced to? Looking at Chun Hao's confident and arrogant appearance, Moe couldn't help but ask. Hellion Woozy also stared at Chun Hao curiously. Chun Hao, who was in a happy mood because of the great harvest, looked at Hellion Woozy and Moe's appearance that couldn't be seen at all, especially Hellion Woozy, who was supposed to have a beautiful little face. Chun Hao suddenly had the urge to laugh and felt a little proud. A young girl, especially a beautiful young girl, would be very protective and cherish her appearance. But Hellion Woozy, because of his instructions, made her face like this. It was really rare. My rank isn't important. What's important is that a rank 9 martial monarch can't do anything to me. Okay, let's go. Oh, you can wash your faces. We'll go openly, Chun Hao said. As the three of them stopped hiding their tracks and swaggered towards the core palace, they met more and more disciples who were gathering towards the core palace. Boom, boom, boom. Powerful and terrifying attacks came from all around the core palace. Obviously, Zhao Yunfei and the other 3 experts had returned to the 4 big doors and started to break them. What made them happy was that the originally motionless doors finally showed signs of loosening at this moment. Even the top of the palace made a rumbling sound. Obviously, the earth door at the top was no longer like the outside of the Xianhuang treasury, which was protected by 7-colored light. It was also the target of everyone's fighting. Moreover, the number of people who reached the top was undoubtedly the most, because there were no 4 experts guarding the top. Wow, Hellion Woozy. Isn't that Hellion Woozy? What a miserable appearance. I feel pity for her. She's really beautiful. It's a pity that Dongfang Jun took a fancy to her. We don't have a chance anymore. It's said that Dongfang Jun once invited Hellion Woozy to join the Dongfang family's team, but was rejected. Did you see that? That Chun Hao is the boss of the 3 of them. It's said that he even injured Dongfang Ying and Dongfang Jia. Are you bragging? Dongfang Ying and Dongfang Jia are both peak rank 4 martial monarchs. Although their ranks aren't high, the fighting power of the Dongfang family's disciples is quite strong. Moreover, it's said that Chun Hao just advanced to rank 1 martial monarch and obtained the qualification to participate in the trial. It's definitely true. It was the disciples of the Cold Moon Hall who saw it. When we just entered the Xianhuang ancient city, didn't you hear that the Dongfang family's people were looking for Chun Hao and Hellion Woozy? They're actually that strong? Yeah. Look, their bags are all bulging. It's obvious that they've hunted as many demonic beasts as us. How can their strength be weak? When Chun Hao and the other 2 arrived in front of a large door, Hellion Woozy, who had already washed off the dirt on her face, revealed her beautiful little face. Although her clothes were still like that of a little beggar, her beautiful and cold face still attracted the attention of many disciples and caused them to discuss. Even Chun Hao and Mo Yui became the focus of everyone. After a while, Chun Hao became the subject of heated discussion. However, if these people knew that there were only a few demonic beast cores in their bags, and that they were mostly precious spiritual herbs and crystal stones, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. Of course, it would be normal for them to fight over it. In the face of everyone's discussion, Chun Hao didn't care in the slightest. However, Hellion Woozy slightly frowned. Her expression was ice-cold, and she even secretly glanced at Chun Hao. At this moment, this girl's mind was only filled with the 4 words that Chun Hao had said to her, femme fatale. She even regretted washing off the dirt on her face. Fortunately, Chun Hao didn't reveal anything, which made her feel slightly relieved. The people who were attacking the door were Chun Hao and the other 2's acquaintances, Zhuge Qingyun's group. As for the others, they were watching from afar. Most of them were disciples of rank 2 to rank 4 martial monarchs. Obviously, they all had the mood of watching a good show and didn't have the slightest intention of fighting over it. It couldn't be helped that they weren't strong enough. They didn't even have the ability to climb to the top of the palace. Without the strength of a rank 5 martial monarch, they wouldn't be able to climb to the top of the palace that was over 10 zhang tall. Otherwise, they would have tried their luck. As for the slightly stronger groups, they had already climbed to the top of the palace that didn't have the 4 great expert groups. Bang, bang, bang. Seeing that the door that Zhuge Qingyun and the others were using brute force to attack was getting looser and looser, Chun Hao knew that it wouldn't be long before it would be broken open. He raised his head and muttered to himself for a while, then suddenly said, "Come, let's go up. Students who have finished reading, please recommend this to your collection. Thank you." Chapter 89. Please add recommend. Thank you for yesterday's reward. 588 Chidian coins, 200 Chidian coins, 100 Chidian coins from Feng Beiyi, 300 Chidian coins, 300 Chidian coins, 300 Chidian coins. Thank you. The top floor of the palace seemed to be at least 10 feet high, and there was no place to borrow strength. Chun Hao directly grabbed Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui's little hands, one on the left and one on the right. "Let's go." Boom, boom, boom. Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui were already prepared. When Chun Hao's surging origin power entered their bodies, The three of them exerted their strength at the same time, and three explosions sounded from under their feet. Even want to go up? Many people in the crowd began to mock him, but they immediately shut their mouths in shock. Chun Hao and the other two landed on the edge of the roof without any suspense, and then disappeared from everyone's sight. How is this possible? Rank 4 Martial King. Then Chun Hao has already advanced to rank 4 Martial King? But Chun Hao's boundless brown origin power was clearly the sign of a rank 4 Martial King. Just this alone was enough to shock everyone. What was even more shocking was that it was already very difficult for a rank 4 Martial King to reach the top, but he actually brought two people who were clearly rank 1 Martial Kings to the top at the same time. 3 months ago, he was still a Martial Master. Moreover, he was the lowest ranked Martial Master among the new disciples of the Imperial family's new Excellence Hall. He was already a rank 4 Martial King. This kind of speed of improvement was too shocking, especially since everyone present was a rare genius in Jinyuan Kingdom. Bang, bang, bang. Dozens of figures gathered at the center of the roof, and they were all wildly attacking. It was extremely chaotic. Obviously, the teams on the roof couldn't do anything to each other. They were like a group of dragons without a leader. Don't hold back. If we break through together, we'll all get a share. The 5 elements' spiritual roots must be in this hall. Other than the 4 experts who will definitely get 4, we'll compete fairly for the other one. One of them shouted. Most of them were rank 5 and 6 Martial Kings, and only 3 were rank 7 Martial Kings. The 3 of us will also join. At this moment, Chun Hao's clear voice sounded, and the aura around him suddenly soared violently. Chun Hao knew that although this group of people had no leader, they did not have the strength to contend with him, so they would not be able to join at all. Therefore, before anyone could react to who had arrived, Chun Hao had already displayed his strength. Following Chun Hao's words, he leapt high into the air above the earth gate. His palms contained a terrifying amount of energy, and at the same time, a strange energy filled them as he slammed them down. Boom! Due to the addition of Chun Hao's terrifying palm, the door that was originally trembling suddenly exploded with a loud bang and began to tremble violently. The powerful recoil caused Chun Hao's body to rise up by 3 zhang. But before he landed, Chun Hao exhaled once again and shouted, "Boom, boom, boom. Everyone, let's work together. What are you waiting for?" Under everyone's shocked gazes, Chun Hao did not even touch the ground as he continued to attack. At the same time, his arrogant voice brought everyone back to their senses. No one said anything. Everyone could see that Chun Hao's strength was much stronger than theirs. Other than shock, there was still more shock. Boom, boom, boom. Tacitly acknowledging Chun Hao's existence, everyone attacked violently again. Chun Hao did not expose too much of his strength. Like everyone else, he used brute force. However, he integrated a faint trace of earth attribute energy into his attacks, which doubled the power of his attacks. Boom! When a terrifying sound suddenly exploded, the loosened door finally broke open. Billowing dust and smoke rose, accompanied by bright and sharp rays of light that soared into the sky. The Earth Gate was actually the first to open. At the same time, because the Earth Gate was broken, the other 4 gates that had been loosened for a long time also opened because the 5 elements were broken. What a powerful aura. Charge, 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 charge. The sharp aura and bright rays of light that escaped from the palace instantly ignited everyone. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, it was a crazy situation. Even if the followers of the other 4 sects were blocking the entrance, they were unable to stop the madness of the crowd. The situation was completely out of control. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. One by one, figures rushed into the palace. A dazzling 7-colored light barrier appeared in front of everyone. Within the light barrier, what was out of everyone's expectations was that it was not the 5-element spiritual roots that they knew from the information. Instead, it was 5 different colored treasured swords that were emitting bright rays of light. They were suspended in the east, west, south, north, and middle directions respectively. Everyone's gaze was attracted by the 5 treasured swords. Moe, who loved swords as much as his life, locked his eyes onto the golden sword that was emitting a powerful aura. But Chun Hao's gaze was locked onto the 5 floating swords. It was not eye-catching and did not even have a trace of light. Spiritual treasure. It's definitely a spiritual treasure, someone in the crowd exclaimed. These 5 treasured swords had obviously exceeded the level of ordinary iron. Fire sword, earth sword, I, Zhao Yunfei, want them. Whoever snatches them shall die. The tall, mighty, and strongest Zhao Yunfei's domineering voice resounded in the entire palace as he announced the ownership of the 2 treasured swords. The golden sword is mine, Dongfang Jun's. If you're not afraid of death, come and snatch it. Dongfang Jun spoke in a gloomy voice. I, Bai Lian, want the water sword. You're welcome to snatch it. Bai Lian's mouth had a trace of a smile as he spoke indifferently. I, Zhuge Qingyun, want the wooden sword. Zhuge Qingyun said, facing the terrifying pressure and arrogant words of the 4 great experts. The crazy crowd immediately calmed down. The huge difference in strength made them have no choice but to remain calm. Snatch from whom? 3 of them had valiant strength and were the genius disciples of the Zhenyuan Kingdom's 3 major clans. Who would dare to offend them? Even if they could preserve their lives now, what would happen after they walked out of the Royal News Show Hall 6 years later? As for Zhuge Qingyun, who didn't have the backing of the 3 major clans, no one dared to take him, because Zhuge Qingyun's group was the strongest. With a total of 13 people who could snatch it. We won't snatch the item, but this light barrier definitely contains extremely dense 5-elemental energy. It shouldn't be a problem for us to go in and comprehend it, right? Right at this moment, a strange voice suddenly echoed in everyone's ears. It seemed to be drifting in from all directions, and no one was able to find out who was speaking. However, this wasn't important. The crucial point was that this person's words caused the quiet crowd to instantly become restless again. That's right. We are only here to comprehend and not to snatch the item. Even if the 5 elemental spiritual roots appear, we won't snatch it. We will comprehend as much as we can. Right. You guys can't be too tyrannical. In an instant, countless people responded in unison. All right. With Zhao Yunfei being the first to agree, Dongfang Jun and the others immediately agreed as well. They were clear that if everyone really went crazy, even if they could snatch the item, they would have to pay a huge price. Chun Hao, who was hiding at the back of the crowd, had a strange smile on his face. His lips didn't move, but right at this moment that strange voice echoed again. Charge! Every moment counts. Boom, boom, boom. This bewitching voice instantly caused everyone to stop hesitating and quickly rush towards the 7-colored light shield. The 2 of you don't go in, Chun Hao whispered to Helian Wuzi and Moe. Immediately, he blended into the crowd and rushed towards the 7-colored light shield. The 5-elemental attribute in the middle is definitely the thickest. Everyone go to the middle to comprehend, the strange voice sounded again. Those who originally wanted to sit down cross-legged and immediately start to comprehend, immediately began to rush towards the core frantically. Chun Hao blended into the crowd and rushed to the core like lightning. He seized the most central position and directly sat down cross-legged. No one noticed that at the instant he sat down, a strand of blood essence shot out from the tip of his finger, and it was accompanied by a strange energy that silently fused into the ring beneath him. After a short moment, the ring that was embedded in the center of the profound runes actually transformed into a strand of light that disappeared under Chun Hao's butt. At this moment, Zhao Yunfei, Dongfang Jun, and the other 3 experts had already leaped into the air and collected the spiritual treasures that they fancied. No one dared to compete with them. Other than being envious and jealous, there was nothing they could do. Good sword. Ha ha. When Zhao Yunfei, Dongfang Han, and the others were excitedly holding onto the various attribute treasures, they were instantly filled with excitement. The pure and boundless attribute energy contained within the sword had completely exceeded their imagination. It was definitely a rather valiant existence among the spiritual treasures. Ah, ah. But right at this moment, no matter if it was Zhao Yunfei, Dongfang Jun, Bailey Yin, or Zhuge Qingyun, they all exclaimed at the same time. Chapter 90. Tomorrow's third watch, tonight's first watch. Brothers and sisters, please support Dark Mountain when the time comes. Thank you. Hiss! It was completely out of everyone's expectations. The 5 swords flew out of the hands of the 4 experts and transformed into 5 incomparably resplendent rays of light. It almost blinded everyone's eyes, especially the 4 experts who were holding the swords. They felt as if they had been blinded by the dazzling light in front of their eyes. Their vision was temporarily blinded. The sword of metal, showing off its sharpness, lightning flashing and thunder rumbling. The sword of wood, rustling in the wind, raging winds rising. The sword of water, bone-chilling cold, billowing smoke. The sword of fire, blazing flames, dazzling light. The sword of earth, pressing down like Mount Tai, descending darkness. Metal gave birth to lightning, wood gave birth to wind, water gave birth to ice and mist, fire gave birth to light, earth gave birth to darkness. The 5 treasured swords blossomed with extremely terrifying energy, causing chaos. In an instant, screams rang out from all directions. No one could see anything, but the terrifying and violent energy fluctuations and the hissing sound of the swords tearing through the air caused them to cry out one by one. A figure escaped from the crowd like a gust of wind amidst the chaos and silently drifted to the edge of the chaos, screaming along with everyone else. Who is it? Who stole my treasured swords? The 4 experts roared angrily. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the teleportation talismans that everyone received before the trial suddenly began to vibrate violently. The bright light disappeared, the smoke dispersed, and the terrifying energy disappeared in an instant. Waves of mysterious runes also enveloped everyone's body. The 4 experts who were unwilling to give up swept their gazes over the figures in the main hall, but they didn't discover anything. It was as if the 5 treasured swords had disappeared into thin air. This made them gnash their teeth in hatred. They were extremely unwilling to give up. How could the meat in their mouths fly away inexplicably? Who would be willing to give up? But at this moment, they knew that there was no hope of getting it back. The 5 elemental spiritual roots were nowhere to be seen, and the 5 treasured swords had disappeared into thin air. However, the trial in the Xianhuang ancient city had ended in advance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The teleportation talismans on everyone's bodies were activated one after another, and their figures suddenly twisted and disappeared into thin air. When they reappeared, they were already on the ancient teleportation array in the Royal Nusho Hall. What's going on? Why did it end early? The several old men in charge of operating the teleportation array and sensing the spatial aura of Xianhuang Ancient City were extremely surprised when they sensed the sudden fluctuations coming from the teleportation array. Xianhuang Ancient City was open for 2 months every year. Only when the teleportation talismans on the trial disciples sensed the aura of the ancient city being about to close would they automatically activate and teleport everyone back. But at this moment, it had only been a month. How could the teleportation talisman have been activated? However, the elders seemed to have thought of something, and their faces were filled with excitement. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The figures of Chun Hao, Helian Wuzi, and Mo Yui also appeared in the teleportation array. All of them looked confused. Of course, Chun Hao's confusion was different from Helian Wuzi's and Mo Yui's. This brother was completely pretending. Who obtained the 5 elements spiritual roots? The Vice Hall Master in charge of this trial asked in a pleasantly surprised voice when he saw the disciples being teleported out one after another. However, when he saw the depressed Zhao Yunfei, the Vice Hall Master slightly frowned and said, "Yunfei, what's going on?" Vice Hall Master, the Xianhuang ancient city should have collapsed. What about the 5 elements spiritual roots? Did someone obtain them? No. We opened the Xianhuang treasure vault and saw 5 5-element spiritual swords, but we didn't see any 5-element spiritual roots. What about the swords? Who obtained them? Zhao Yunfei was even more depressed when he heard the Vice Hall Master's words. Mother of Asterisk Her, he obtained 2 swords, but they suddenly disappeared for some reason. No one obtained them. Originally, Dongfang Jun, Bailey Yin, and Zhuge Qingyun obtained the 5 swords, but an accident happened the moment we obtained them. The 5 swords strangely left our hands and disappeared. We didn't even have time to figure out what happened before the teleportation talisman was activated. What? The Vice Hall Master and several old men felt incredulous when they heard Zhao Yunfei's words. They were clear that any ruins would only collapse after losing the array supporting the ruins. For the Xianhuang ancient city ruins, it was undoubtedly the 5 elements spiritual roots and the Xianhuang treasure vault. Now that the trial had ended early, the only possibility was that the ruins had collapsed. In other words, the 5 elements spiritual roots and the Xianhuang treasure vault had been obtained by someone. However, according to Zhao Yunfei, no one obtained them. After Dongfang Jun, Bailey Yin, Zhuge Qingyun, and the others came out, the Vice Hall Master asked them one by one and said the same thing as Zhao Yunfei. If the 4 great experts didn't obtain them, it was even more impossible for the others to obtain them. However, this matter was truly strange. Could it be that the demonic beasts in the Xianhuang ancient city obtained them? When everyone was teleported back, the Vice Hall Master counted the number of people. What made his heart ache even more was that there were actually 34 people who didn't return. It was obvious that these people had been buried in the Xianhuang ancient city. As for how they died, everyone was well aware of it. How could the fight for the Xianhuang treasure vault be simple? Among the 34 people, at least half of them had died in the fight. Even if the new show hall had rules and restrictions for this kind of matter, and it was the heaviest punishment of paying with one's life, unless someone witnessed it and had evidence, they couldn't do anything about it. Of course, they weren't willing to seriously investigate. These disciples were the rare geniuses of the Zhenyuan kingdom. With one less, the Zhenyuan kingdom would have one less strength in the future. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that from the expressions of the majority of the disciples, they should have obtained a huge harvest in the Xianhuang treasure vault. On the same day, explosive news spread out from the Royal New Show Hall. Not only did it cause a huge sensation among the intermediate and advanced disciples in the Royal New Show Hall, even the Hall Master, Vice Hall Master, elders, and countless expert instructors were filled with shock and joy. Harvest! That's right, the harvest of the new disciples in the Xianhuang treasure vault was beyond everyone's expectations. It made the intermediate and advanced disciples envious. 5 elements spiritual pills. It contained the purest and top-notch energy of the 5 elements spiritual roots. Based on the amount of energy it contained, it could only be regarded as a Tier 6 spiritual medicine at best. But its value was far beyond that of a Tier 6 spiritual medicine, because any kind of 5-element spiritual pill had an extremely amazing effect on the comprehension of the 5 elements energy. It was far from comparable to the pills refined from ordinary spiritual medicine. What's more, in addition to the 5 elements spiritual pills, there were also spiritual crystals that could condense the power of the 5 elements. Therefore, the Hall Master of the Royal New Show Hall immediately issued an announcement. Anyone who offered a 5-element spiritual pill could exchange it for 10 Tier 6 spiritual medicines or 1 Tier 7 spiritual medicine, no matter which attribute of the 5 elements it was. The value of the 5 elements spiritual crystals was estimated according to the size of the spiritual crystals, which could be exchanged for more abundant spiritual medicines. In addition, the ranking and welfare level of this trial test were also determined according to the number of exchanges and the level and quantity of demonic beast cores obtained. Many people didn't want to exchange. After all, the 5-element spiritual pills were of great value to any cultivator, not to mention that most people only got 20 or so pills, and some even had 30 or 40 pills. If they didn't even have enough for themselves, who would exchange for them. But if it was linked to the welfare level, some disciples couldn't help but be tempted, because the welfare level not only determined the amount of spiritual pills they received every month, but also determined the level of the unique skills they could choose to practice in the unique art library. This was what really tempted all the disciples. That night, the door of Chun-Hao's room was closed. In the cultivation room, Chun-Hao's handsome face was full of smiles. He squinted his eyes and looked at the excited Mo Yui and Hellion Wuzi. On the floor of the cultivation room, a huge carpet was spread out. The carpet was covered with 5 elemental spirit pills of different colors, but all of them were crystal clear. The entire cultivation room was filled with 7 colors, making it seem like a dream or a fantasy. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, the 5 attributes were all derived from each other. There were also 5 elements spiritual crystals. How many were there? Hellion Wuzi, who had always been as cold as an iceberg, was now full of excitement. She squatted on the floor and picked up the spiritual pills of different attributes one by one. She put the spiritual pills of different attributes together. The corner of her mouth was slightly raised, and her little dimples were small. Other than joy, where was the coldness? P.S. Recommending friend Wandering Magic's new work, Sword Star. Elegance, pride, sincerity as the sword. Using the rules of the sword to derive the natal star, the sword breaks all skills. Calmness, white as snow, holding the sword with a smile. Anger, the sword breaks the firmament, and blood stains the blue sky. The sword wielder, with a sword in hand, is the sword star. Book ID equals 2400373. Book name equals Sword Star. Chapter 91. A new week, the first update, is available. Please recommend it, collect it, thank you. Cough, cough. Chun-Hao, the boss, coughed awkwardly and hurriedly averted his gaze. He, who was standing and not doing anything, looked down at Hellion Wuzi, who was squatting on the ground and sorting out the elixirs. He accidentally saw 2 snow-white cleavage through the girl's slightly loose collar. This was really an accident, and also purely unintentional. What's wrong, boss? Mo Yui, who was also squatting on the ground, hurriedly asked. Nothing. Chun-Hao shook his head and said, but secretly scolded in his heart. This guy usually doesn't even fart for 3 to 5 days, but when he shouldn't speak, he interrupted. Oh, Mo Yui replied, and his broken arm that had not recovered yet hugged the big sword that looked even more tattered. His other hand, like Hellion Wuzi, continued to pick and sort out the elixirs excitedly. If they knew that the 5 treasured swords and the 5 element spirit roots were all obtained by me, what kind of expression would they have? Looking at the excited looks of the two, Chun-Hao couldn't help but smirk in his heart. 5 elements spirit roots, the 2 of them should have guessed that I have already obtained 5 treasured swords. Huh. Even I didn't expect that. The truth was indeed so. At that time, Chun-Hao only knew that the most inconspicuous ring at the core of the rune was worth more than the 5 treasured swords, according to the hint of the treasure hunting sword spirit. Moreover, he directly followed the words of the treasure hunting sword spirit and poured his own essence blood and the aura of the 5 elements spirit roots into it. It was equivalent to the spirit treasure recognizing its master. But after doing all this, he and the treasure hunting sword spirit did not expect that the 5 treasured swords would actually recognize the ring as its master, creating a subtle connection between Chun-Hao and it, as if the 5 treasured swords had also recognized him as their master. What was there for Chun-Hao to hesitate about? His head wasn't kicked by a donkey, and his head wasn't clamped by a door. Moreover, in order to obtain the ring, Chun-Hao had already created a chaotic effect and completely met the conditions to silently make a fortune. Of course, he didn't hesitate to take the 5 treasured swords into the ring during the chaos. Boss, a total of 432 pieces of metal attribute derived from the thunder attribute. A total of 324 pieces of wood attribute derived from the wind attribute. The earth element was derived from the darkness element, and there were also 432 of them. 8 gold spiritual crystals, 6 wood spiritual crystals, 8 earth spiritual crystals. Moyui said excitedly. Immediately after, Hellion Woozy, who was completely unaware that she was exposed, also reported the fire and water attributes. The fire attribute was the most derivative, and the light attribute was the least in number. There were only 216 fire crystals and 4 fire crystals. The water element was the most astonishing. There were a total of 1,088 spiritual crystals of water, including 20 relatively large ones and 1 small one that looked like a jade pendant. In total, there were 2,492 five-elements spiritual pills, 46 large five-elements spiritual crystals, and 1 small spiritual crystal. This harvest was too heaven-defying and shocking. It absolutely accounted for a third of the total income of all the disciples. Boss, why do I feel like half of it is missing? 1 spirit crystal is equivalent to 108 five-element spirit pills. Yeah, why is there so little? Chunhao didn't answer their questions directly. Instead, he smiled and said, "You should have already guessed that I've obtained the 5 elements spiritual roots. In addition to the 5 elements spiritual roots, the core treasure of the black-yellow treasury is also in my hands." Chunhao's words made Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui widen their eyes at the same time. As Chunhao said, he had obtained the 5 elements spiritual roots. Although Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui were not sure, they vaguely guessed it. After all, when the palaces in the black-yellow treasury were opened, Chunhao's original energy contained a strange energy every time, which could easily open the palaces. But how could the core treasure of the black-yellow treasury also be in the hands of Chunhao? At that time, the two felt that Chunhao's actions were strange, but they never thought that how could Chunhao get the things that had been obtained by the 4 great masters? At that time, I deliberately caused chaos to deceive others. However, I just wanted to get the inconspicuous black-yellow ring, but I didn't expect that the 5 sword were closely related to the black-yellow ring. So, naturally, I took them together. But the price was that I spent half of our 5-element spiritual pills. Chunhao said with pain, This can't be helped. My current strength is too low, so I can't activate the black-yellow ring. I can only activate it by swallowing the 5 elements spiritual pills. Otherwise, I can't hide it from Zhao Yunfei and the rest. Chunhao said, but although it's painful, it's still worth it. The value of the 5 swords far exceeds the value of half of our 5 elements spiritual pills. Moreover, the black-yellow ring has a storage space. You saw Uncle Huang's storage ring last time, and it's similar to that thing. These spiritual pills and crystals are absolutely safe in there, unless I die. This matter cannot be known by anyone. Otherwise, we will offend the 3 great clans and Zhuge Qingyun. Our current strength is still too weak, so we must keep a low profile. What's with your eyes? No, nothing, Mo Yui said. All right, each of us take 20 spiritual pills and exchange them for level 6 or level 7 elixirs. The level of benefits should be good, and the elixirs exchanged will be enough for us to use for a long time. Each of you take 1 spiritual crystal of each attribute for cultivation. The rest will be temporarily kept by me. When there's an opportunity to get a storage ring, I will distribute it to you. I believe it won't take long. If you don't have enough, just look for me. As Chunhao spoke, he emitted a stream of mental energy from between his eyebrows. In an instant, the spiritual pills and crystals on the carpet disappeared with whooshing sounds. This caused Hellion Woozy and Mo Yui to be dumbfounded. There was nothing they could do. The storage space was simply too mystical for the two of them. They had only seen the storage ring when they followed Huang Qi previously. That was something that only martial god realm experts could refine. It was incomparably precious. In a small place like the Cloud region, it was basically impossible to have it. However, according to what Huang Qi said, it wasn't difficult for the disciples of the Royal New Show Hall to obtain a low-grade storage ring. Fortunately, Chunhao was still able to activate the storage function and didn't need to consume any spiritual pills. Otherwise, it would be a huge tragedy. When our strength is sufficient, I will let the two of you use the water sword and golden sword. We can't expose it now, so I will keep it for the time being. Chen Hao continued. I don't need it. Helian Wuzi didn't say anything, but Mo Yu, he only hesitated for a moment, then hugged the broken sword tightly in his arms and said, Boss, it's enough for me. Although the golden sword is very good, but what I like more is this sword that has accompanied me since I was a child. What's so good about this broken sword of yours? Do you really treat it as your wife? Chen Hao said speechlessly. No, boss, although this sword isn't a good sword, it is my only proof of identity. And I can feel that it has feelings for me. Mo Yui's expression was strange, as he said with a red face. Cough, cough. Helian Wuzi suppressed her laughter and coughed lightly to cover it up. No way. Chen Hao stared at Mo Yui with wide eyes. Actually, I'm not a direct descendant of the Mo family. My father is actually my adoptive father. According to my adoptive father, when he picked me up, I was with this sword. At that time, I was just born. Mo Yui's gaze became a little complicated and his voice was low. Helian Wuzi, who originally wanted to laugh, also didn't have the slightest trace of a smile at this moment. As for Chen Hao, he finally understood why Mo Yui was a sword maniac who was silent and reclusive. His sword is not simple. At this moment, the voice of the treasure-hunting sword's spirit rang in Chen Hao's mind. Oh, how is it not simple? Chen Hao asked with slight surprise. I don't know the details. The material is very ordinary, but it seems to contain an aura similar to mine. It's very, very weak, but I can confirm that as this kid's strength increases, this sword will also gradually evolve and upgrade. Are you saying that his lousy sword has a sword spirit? Kid, let's discuss something. The treasure-hunting sword's spirit suddenly changed the topic. There's no discussion. I haven't said anything yet. Are you really not going to discuss it? Don't you just want to swallow the 5 elements spiritual pills? Yes. Are you really not going to give it to me? Don't regret it. What I hate the most is people who burn bridges after crossing the river. Could you have gotten so much without me? Don't expect me to help you sense treasures in the future. Cough, cough. 10. Chen Hao hurriedly replied when he heard the treasure-hunting sword spirit. 500. 20. 600. F asterisk CK. 500. If you don't want to do it, forget it. Including the 2 of them, I contributed the most, but I didn't even get a quarter of it. I even helped you get the 5 elements spiritual root, the dark yellow ring, and the 5 elements sword. Don't be too stingy. P.S. Thanks to Passionate Love Carrot 1176 Chidian coins. Happy Drunk in the Wind 200 Chidian coins. Maple Apart from the Night 100 Chidian coins. Dream is already carrot 100 Chidian coins for their support. Thank you very much. Begging for collection recommendation tickets. The second update is at noon, and the third update is at around 7 p.m. Chapter 92. Second update, please recommend me. Thank you. Third update, before 7 p.m. All right, I'll let you devour them after they leave. Chen Hao had no choice but to compromise. He had already thought of this. He had refused to discuss it earlier because he was afraid that this fellow would ask for too much. 500 was still within his acceptable range. After all, without Treasure Hunter's sword spirit, Chen Hao's gains would not be much higher than the other disciples, let alone the 5-element spirit root. After sending Treasure Hunter's sword spirit away, Chen Hao looked at Mo Yui and said, "Then use your sword. I also feel that your sword is not that simple. I'm afraid it has something to do with your sword intent." Yes, boss. It's just that its material is a little lacking. If it had the sharp aura of a golden sword, it would be perfect. That's simple. When you become stronger, just use your energy to refine it. As long as you find enough precious ores, you can gradually become stronger. All right, you can all go back and cultivate. Tomorrow morning, we'll go and exchange for them. After we assess the benefits, we'll go to the secret library to take a look. What? How many did you say? The general manager of Cold Moon Hall looked at Chen Hao and the other 2 in shock, thinking that he had misheard. Yesterday, the hall master had already made an announcement and used the benefits to attract new disciples to exchange for some of their five-element spirit pills. However, most of the disciples who came this morning only had 2 or 3 pills. The most they had was 5 pills. Obviously, everyone knew how precious the five-element spirit pills were. It was already not easy to take out 5 pills. However, at this moment, Chun Hao actually said that each of them would exchange 20 pills for a total of 60 pills. The general manager thought that he had misheard and looked at Chun Hao and the other two in shock. "We're too weak. Instead of keeping the 5-element spirit pills for future use, it's better to exchange them for level 6 and level 7 spirit pills. We think it's worth it. So, we'll exchange all of them for a total of 60 pills." Chun Hao said straightforwardly, "General Manager, please exchange 20 level 7 spirit pills for us and the rest for level 6 spirit pills." This. Good. What a good child. If we all have this kind of dedication, our Royal New Show Hall won't be strong. But aren't you going to keep a few for yourself? This is a spirit pill with the aura of the 5 elements spiritual roots. Although it is not very precious, it can only be found by chance. It will be very useful to you in the future. Although Old Man really wants all of you to exchange for it, it's better for you to keep a few for yourself. No need. Thank you, Chief Steward. We believe that we will be able to comprehend it with our own strength in the future. Let's exchange them all, Chun Hao said while shaking his head. All right then, level 3 benefits. This time, the 3 of you will receive a very high level of benefits. You might be tied for first place among the new disciples of Cold Moon Hall. These were 20 level 7 spiritual herbs and 400 level 6 spiritual herbs, which were exchanged. These 16 level 6 spiritual herbs and 60 level 5 spiritual herbs are your level 3 benefits for the 3 of you this month. Take these 3 tokens and go to the Secret Art Library to choose a cultivation method. Work hard and cultivate. I believe you will be able to improve your ranking in the year-end test. Yes. Thank you, Chief. Chun Hao and the other 2 bowed and left the hall. How could there be such stupid people? Not really. Their realms are too low. It is said that they came from a small county. They are obviously lacking in spiritual herbs and don't have any high-level cultivation methods. How can they rely on such little benefits? If I were them, I would do the same. After all, it's not only shameful to have a poor result in the end-of-year test, but they're also at the bottom. However, their luck is really good. They actually obtained 60 spirit pills, which is better than many people. That's true, but it is still not worth it. Hellion Woozy's conditions are so good. There are quite a few awesome people in New Excellence Hall who want to get close to her. Just casually deal with them, and I reckon they'll be able to obtain endless benefits. If I were her, I'd definitely be able to mix in with the wind and the water and get benefits from both sides. Bah, if you were a woman, you would definitely be a broken shoe. Save it. I like girls with integrity like Hellion Woozy. You? Liking her is my personal matter. I didn't ask Hellion Woozy to like me. Chun Hao and the other 2 ignored the discussion and walked quickly to the Secret Art Library. The Secret Art Library was a giant palace with 7 floors. When Chun Hao approached it, his sharp senses sensed that the Secret Art Library was surrounded by layers of powerful restrictions. Chun Hao knew that if there were any abnormalities here, they would be surrounded by the experts of the New Show Hall immediately. From the 1st floor to the 7th floor, the higher the level of the secret arts, the stronger and higher the level of the secret arts. New disciples could enter the 1st floor when they received the 1st level benefits. The 1st floor was basically filled with 6th level and 7th level secret arts. This was the top cultivation method in Yinzhou County. However, in the Royal New Show Hall, it was only the lowest level of secret arts. The difference was too big. Of course, Chun Hao also knew that the real secret arts of the Royal New Show Hall would not be in the Secret Art Library. Chun Hao and the other 2 received the 3rd level benefits and were qualified to enter the 3rd floor. Uncle Huang? When Chun Hao and the other 2 arrived at the entrance of the Secret Art Library, they were surprised to find that the old man guarding the door was Huang Qi. Didn't the old man tell you? The old man is the uncle guarding the Royal News Show Hall. However, he's only the uncle guarding the secret art library. Ha! Huang Chi, who was squinting his eyes as if he was lazily sleeping, immediately opened his eyes when he heard Chun Hao's voice. His sleepiness was completely gone. After carefully sensing the three of them, his gaze fell on Chun Hao's face, and he said, "Not bad. You've improved a lot. What level are you at now?" A martial artist's true level was very difficult to sense just by relying on one's perception, unless it was during a battle or when a martial artist fully released his aura. It was even harder to sense the level of an intent. When an intent expert restrained their mental strength, even an intent expert would not be able to sense their level of cultivation. Fourth level Martial King, Chun Hao said with a smile. Not bad, not bad. If you work a little harder, there might be hope. Huang Chi smiled and said, What about intent? What level are you at now? Intent. I haven't cultivated much yet. I put most of my energy into martial arts. Uncle Huang, what do you mean by hope? Chun Hao concealed his intent cultivation. It wasn't that he didn't trust Huang Chi, but he had his own plans. A dual cultivator of intent and martial arts had never appeared in the Jinyuan kingdom. But now, he had mastered the ability to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger, pretend to be a tiger to scare people, and pretend to be a tiger to disguise his realm at will. Naturally, he didn't want to reveal his cultivation base. Otherwise, once word got out, his awesome ability would lose its effect. Not cultivating is also right. After all, even though you have the talent of intent, this talent isn't considered strong compared to a true intent expert. Everyone has their own specialization, and a person's energy is limited. You only need to focus on martial arts. With the talent of intent, your mental strength will naturally surpass ordinary martial artists. When you step into a higher realm in the future, you will have an advantage that others don't have. As for the hope I mentioned, when you really have hope, you'll naturally know. Give me the token. Uncle will do things according to the rules. Even though we have a close relationship, we still have to do things according to the rules. Huang Chi said as he stretched out his hand. When Chun Hao and the other two took out their tokens, Huang Chi suddenly exclaimed, Level 3 benefits. So powerful? It's SOSO. We've exchanged all 5 elements spirit pills. Chun Hao said, Exchange all? Hearing Chun Hao's words, Huang Chi's eyes narrowed into slits. Who would believe you? With your IQ. Cough, cough. Chun Hao scratched his head awkwardly. He didn't expect Huang Chi, this old man, to be so shrewd. Little girl, and you, why are you still like a block of wood? You have to learn to be smarter, understand? Yes, Uncle Huang. Helian Woozy and Mo Yui hurriedly said. Each person can only choose one martial skill and one martial art. You must pick them out within an hour and return them within 3 months. Also, even if it's the 3 of you, you can't lend them to each other or teach them to anyone else. Otherwise, the punishment will be very severe. Go, go. Uncle Huang, is there any other problem? Can I choose the intent absolute art? Even though I haven't cultivated it, I want to familiarize myself with it. If it's not so difficult and doesn't consume too much energy, I can give it a try. Chun Hao said, that's true. If you cultivate it casually, your mental strength will be stronger. It's also very beneficial to martial artists. All right, your situation is special. Uncle Huang, I'll make the decision and allow you to choose 2 more intent absolute art. Go. Thank you, Uncle Huang. The 3 of them responded and directly walked into the entrance to the 3rd floor of the Absolute Art Library. After reading it, please help to recommend it. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 93. Third update, please recommend, bookmark. Thank you. The 3rd floor of the unique study library was 100 feet long and wide. It was surrounded by bookshelves made of white jade crystals. Secret manuals were placed in individual bookshelves. Beside each bookshelf, there was a name and introduction of the secret manual. There were hundreds of books on these 3 levels alone. A faint sandalwood fragrance filled the air. Smelling it made one feel relaxed and happy. Their minds seemed to clear up in an instant, and their mind was peaceful. It was as if all the worries that filled the heart like smoke had been quietly dispelled. The entire third floor was divided into 4 major areas: martial skills, martial arts, mental skills, and mental skills. Among them, the martial skills area was the largest, followed by martial arts. The mental skills and mental skills areas added together were not even 1/10 of the martial skills area. Obviously, the cultivation secret manuals related to mental skills were as rare as mental skills to martial artists in the entire Jinyuan kingdom. More than 10 young men and women were standing in front of the bookshelves, choosing secret manuals. Looking at their age, they were about the same as Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui. From their clothes, Chun Hao and the other 2 understood that they were disciples who had entered the Royal New Show Hall a year earlier than them. "There's only an hour. Hurry up and choose," Chun Hao said in a low voice and walked towards the martial skills area. Martial skills were the way to use origin energy. The more powerful the martial skill, the more it increased the power of origin energy. As for martial arts, it was the inner strength mental cultivation method. It was the most fundamental thing for cultivators and also the key to breaking through realms. Chun Hao had no interest in martial arts. Longevity secrets was definitely more powerful than the cultivation methods here. What's more, the taboo of inner strength mental cultivation methods was to be greedy. With longevity secrets, it was meaningless to cultivate other cultivation methods. As for martial skills, Chun Hao was quite interested. Because martial skills and ancient Chinese martial arts were combined, there would definitely be unexpected results. Although ancient Chinese martial arts were valiant, it was strong in the moves. If it could be combined with powerful martial skills and increase the strength by several times, the power would naturally be stronger. An hour is enough for me to memorize dozens of secret manuals. Chun Hao looked at the dazzling array of secret manuals and thought to himself excitedly. Now he already knew how abnormal his memory was. However, when Chun Hao casually flipped open a secret manual, he frowned. Mo Yui and Helian Wuzi, who were also following him to choose secret books, were also at a loss and puzzled. Other than the name on the cover of the secret manual, there was not a single word after opening it. What was going on? Is this your first time in the secret library? Just as the 3 of them were in a daze, a young girl with an elegant and refined temperament slowly walked to their side and said with a faint smile. This young girl's eyes seemed to be shrouded in a faint mist, hazy and unfathomable. She had jade-like bones and icy skin, and her figure was graceful. Although it wasn't as beautiful as Helian Wuzi's little face, it had a unique charm. Chun Hao frowned slightly, looked at the girl, and nodded. "Haha, it was the same when I came here for the first time. All the secret manuals in the secret art library were condensed by the experts of our Jinyuan kingdom. They're not ordinary secret manuals. The reason for this is to prevent us, the disciples, from being greedy. If you want to cultivate these secret manuals, you need to inject energy into them in order to open the first level. Once you have mastered the first level, you need to circulate the essence of the first level and inject it into them again to open the second level. In other words, you have to do it step by step. When you choose a secret manual, you only need to look at the introduction beside it. If you like it, you can borrow it." "I see. Thank you, senior sister." Chun Hao cupped his fists and said. He felt a little strange. This young girl's appearance and temperament were obviously not the kind of people who like to take the initiative to interact with others, especially when he saw the gazes of the other disciples who were choosing secret manuals. Chun Hao was even more certain of this point. However, this young girl actually took the initiative to approach and explain to the 3 of them, which made Chun Hao a little surprised. "You're welcome. You're Chun Hao, right?" As expected, the girl smiled slightly and looked at Chun Hao with her hazy eyes. Without giving Chun Hao time to answer, the girl continued, "My name is Fong Qing. I entered the Royal New Show Hall a year earlier than you. We are all junior disciples. I heard from my grandfather that you have a physique that cultivates both martial arts and will. It's very rare. Senior sister, your grandfather is President Fong?" Hearing the girl's words, Chun Hao frowned slightly and asked, Yes, my grandfather thinks very highly of you. Although he has many personal disciples, he is very concerned about your situation. Ha! I am also very curious as to what level you can reach in the future with this kind of physique. Now it seems... The young girl stared at Chun Hao and said with a smile. As she spoke, a ray of light flashed through her misty eyes. It was obvious that she was checking Chun Hao's cultivation. Martial Emperor, your progress is really fast. Thank you for the compliment, senior sister Fong Qing, Chun Hao said. What level? Fong Qing asked. 4th level. Chun Hao did not hide it. What about intent? Chun Hao smiled slightly and repeated what he said to Huang Qi. Fong Qing smiled and did not say much. She waved her hand and said, Okay, hurry up and choose. Work hard on your cultivation. I hope you can get a good ranking in the year-end competition. Through Xiao Qing's introduction, the three of them understood what was going on and began to choose secret manuals. Of course, Chun Hao's dream of reading more secret manuals also became a bubble. He could only obediently start to read the introduction of various absolute arts. Moue quickly chose a sword technique absolute art, Heartless Sword. Heartless Sword, level 8 martial arts technique. Its characteristics were speed, ruthlessness, and accuracy. It was merciless and heartless. The increase in attack power was average, but the speed was twice as fast as ordinary level 8 absolute arts. When a sword technique was mastered, one could stab out 18 sword lights in an instant. Each sword was fatal, as fast as lightning, fierce, and ruthless. It was very suitable for Moue. On the other hand, Helian Wu Zi chose an 8th level palm technique, Exquisite Palm. Exquisite Palm was known as the Exquisite Palm. At the highest level, there were layers of palm shadows, and it was difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. It had amazing offensive and defensive power. When Moue and Helian Wuzi walked to the martial arts area and began to choose martial arts, Chun Hao was still looking at the introduction of each martial arts technique one by one. It seemed that there was nothing that satisfied him. Until the hundreds of secret manuals in the martial arts area were almost finished, Chun Hao's eyes locked on the introduction of a secret manual at the side. Star Shaking Fist, Remnant Volume, Level 8 Martial Arts Technique, a total of 7 moves. Cultivation Requirement, Precise Control of Elemental Energy, Extremely Strong Physical Resistance. Cultivators easily hurt themselves. Cultivate carefully. It's you. Just seeing the 2 words Remnant Volume, Chun Hao was excited. What else was there to think about when he saw the cultivation requirements? Remnant volumes were all level 8 martial arts techniques. The complete ones would definitely be stronger. And the cultivation requirements were tailor-made for Chun Hao. After that, Chun Hao casually took a martial arts technique and pretended. After all, with the complete version of Longevity Secret, Chun Hao didn't need to cultivate any inner force mental cultivation techniques for the time being. After that, Chun Hao carefully chose a level 8 technique, Air-Absorbing Palm, and a level 8 technique, Heart-Shattering Secret. Star-Shaking Fist, Heart-Shattering Secret. When Chun Hao and the other 2 walked out of the secret library's 3rd floor and came to Huang Qi to register, Huang Qi looked at the 4 secret manuals that Chun Hao took out in surprise. The other 2 manuals were nothing, but the Star-Shaking Fist and Heart-Shattering Secret made Huang Qi stare at Chun Hao, seemingly a little surprised. What's wrong? Chun Hao asked. What's wrong? You're really a ruthless kid. There were many people who chose the Star-Shaking Fist, but only a few people actually succeeded in cultivating it. There were many who went berserk while cultivating it, and even more who were injured. There were even some who died while cultivating it. Didn't you see the 2 words on the introduction? This is just a remnant. Now that's interesting. Chun Hao smiled. Interesting? All right, let's not talk about the Star-Shaking Fist, old man. As for the Heart-Shattering Secret, I suggest you change it. You can choose any level 8 technique. Anyway, you major in martial arts, so there's no need to choose this. Why? Is there a need to ask? The introduction is very clear. Heart-shattering, heart-shattering. Every time you cultivate it, it's as if your soul is torn apart and you're in so much pain that you wish you were dead. Without great perseverance and a rock-solid heart. You can't cultivate it. Although the progress is fast, the disciples who choose this technique basically return it early. No one can persevere, and the further you go, the more painful it will be. Old Man also cultivated it in the past. Now that I think about it, I'm afraid. My energy is limited. Isn't it good to improve quickly? The rest doesn't matter. Hearing Huang Qi's words, Chen Hao wasn't afraid. Instead, he felt that he had made a good choice. Pain that you wish you were dead? How many times had Chen Hao experienced pain that made him wish he was dead? As long as he could quickly increase his strength, he had the confidence to endure any pain. You brat. Many people have the same idea as you. In the end, they all wasted a chance to choose a secret manual. You only have one chance to choose from the 3 levels of benefits. There are very few people who can persevere in cultivating it a few times. Don't ignore Old Man's advice. Uncle Huang, I know you're doing this for my own good, but I believe that I can persevere. I'll choose it, Chen Hao said stubbornly. You brat. Up to you. I want to see how many times you can persevere. Brothers and sisters who have finished reading it, please help me recommend it. Thank you. Chapter 94. Looking for recommendation votes. Thank you. Thank you for yesterday's Passionate Love 1176 Chidian coins. Young Promise 1176 Chidian coins. Harmless Donkey 100 Chidian coins. Dream is already 100 Chidian coins. Tears of the Devil King 100 Chidian coins. Drunk in the Wind 100 Chidian coins. And Book Friend 110908232854237100 Chidian coins. Thank you. In the Royal New Show Hall, every disciple had 2 chances to train. After the 2 trials, the next half a year's time would be at their disposal. They could train in seclusion or accept the missions issued by the New Show Hall to train. Once the missions were completed, they would be rewarded with the corresponding level of mission. Such missions were good training for the New Show Hall's disciples. At the same time, it was also a way to obtain additional elixirs. If they encountered any problems during training, they could also seek guidance from the instructor on duty at the martial arts hall. There was no collective teaching like a class restriction. Needless to say, the New Show Hall's model was Chen Hao's favorite. After Chen Hao and the other 2 chose their secret manuals in the unique art library, they didn't accept any missions. Instead, they immersed themselves in training in seclusion. They could only borrow the secret manuals for 3 months. Such special secret manuals could only be learned through cultivation. 3 months was simply too short. Furthermore, there was no possibility of renewing the loan, unless they received the 3rd level of benefits again. Therefore, the 3 of them had to try their best to learn as much as possible. In the Royal New Show Hall's benefits, only the basic benefits would never change. However, the benefits for the higher levels were calculated on a monthly basis. If they received the benefits in the current month and didn't receive any assessment for the next month, they would only receive the basic benefits. They could only enter the 1st level of the unique art library. They couldn't enter the 3rd level. Therefore, the 3 of them could only try their best to learn as much as possible from the secret manuals. In the training room, Chen Hao's body was radiating with a resplendent brown glow of elemental energy. His body was as fast as lightning as he blasted out a punch. At this moment, the glow of elemental energy around his body suddenly converged. His fist was shining with an incomparably resplendent brown glow like a star. Boom! A muffled explosion rang out, causing the entire training room to tremble violently. On the incomparably hard wall made of special metal, a fist imprint about 5 centimeters deep appeared. Almost the entire fist had sunk into the wall. Pung, pung, pung. Chen Hao threw out dozens of punches as fast as lightning. Suddenly, he retreated to the core of the training room and shouted, "Absorb!" Following Chen Hao's shout, he opened his hand and grabbed the 1,000-pound boulder that he had specially brought back from 10 steps away. That 1,000-pound boulder actually flew into the air and directly flew towards Chen Hao. At the same time, Chen Hao punched out. Boom! Stone chips flew everywhere, turning into fine powder. Phew! When the dust settled, Chen Hao stared at the dense fist marks on the wall. He let out a long sigh and revealed a gratified expression. 2 whole months, star-shaking fist, absorbing palm, heartbreaking art, all comprehended. This speed is not bad, right? My battle strength should have increased by at least 30%. I wonder how Xiaowu and Xiaoma are doing. Chen Hao thought to himself as he pushed open the door to the training room. In these 2 months, the 3 of them only met once when they received their benefits last month. The rest of the time, they did not leave the room and relied on the fasting pills to support themselves. They wholeheartedly immersed themselves in closed-door training and comprehending. During this time, Chen Hao's level increased too quickly. What he lacked the most was battle experience. Chen Hao was very clear about the importance of a foundation. Therefore, in this month, besides cultivating longevity's secret while recovering his elemental energy and experiencing death almost every day to cultivate heartbreaking art to refine his psychokinesis, he did not make any breakthroughs. Instead, he wholeheartedly immersed himself in martial arts and mental techniques. But even so, the barrier between Martial King and Mental Emperor 4th stage was already faintly loosening. Chen Hao believed that as long as he was willing, he could break through at any time. Not only that, Chen Hao discovered that with his unique physique that dual cultivated in both martial and will, in this sort of boundary, although the 2 barriers were completely independent of each other, there was also a subtle connection between them. Chen Hao couldn't explain it clearly, but he could feel that as long as he broke through one of the barriers, the other barrier would also break apart. This feeling was very clear. How is it? Not long after, when Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui arrived at Chen Hao's dormitory, Chen Hao asked. Helian Wuzi said, "I've already cultivated to the 7th stage. I've advanced to 3rd stage Martial King. I should be able to cultivate to the last stage next month." Not bad. On the contrary, Helian Wuzi made Chen Hao quite satisfied. He had to admit that this little girl's talent was indeed astonishing. She wasn't as special as he was. To be able to reach such a stage, it was obviously impossible without extremely strong talent. In a small place like the Helian family, she was indeed buried. With the environment and conditions of the Royal New Show Hall, which was 100 times better, Chen Hao believed that this little girl would display more and more astonishing talent. I've also advanced to 3rd stage Martial King. I've comprehended Heartless Sword to the 8th stage. But for the 8th stage Pure Yang art, I've only comprehended to the 6th stage. Mo Yui said with slight regret. Not bad, Chen Hao said. What about you? Helian Wuzi asked. I've cultivated all of them. After 3 months, I'll return the secret manuals with you. I want to take some missions to gain experience first. Hearing Chen Hao's words, Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui were not surprised. The 2 of them were already used to Chen Hao's abnormal talent. Although they had followed Chen Hao's instructions for the past 2 months, desperately torturing themselves and madly cultivating. In the end, they still could not catch up to his pace. After Chen Hao received his benefits, he directly said a few words to Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui, then went to the Cold Moon Hall's primary disciple mission distribution area. The huge hall of the palace was currently filled with Cold Moon Hall's disciples. There were primary disciples, intermediate disciples, and advanced disciples with stronger auras. The first day of every month was the day when the Royal New Show Hall's missions were distributed. Therefore, without a doubt, today was the busiest day in the mission distribution area. Chen Hao. What surprised Chen Hao was that when he walked to the door of the mission distribution area, he met the elegant and refined young girl Fong Qing again. There were several young men and women with Fong Qing. Fong Qing took the lead and was clearly the core of the group. She was walking out of the main hall. Senior sister Fong Qing, what a coincidence, Chen Hao said with a smile. Didn't you borrow the secret manual? Why, did you hit a bottleneck? Fong Qing smiled. Under normal circumstances, the disciples who borrowed the secret manual would go into seclusion to comprehend it. Only when they hit a bottleneck and were stuck would they be inspired through experience and battle. Yes, Chen Hao was slightly taken aback, but he immediately responded. You haven't taken any missions, right? Yes. It's my first time here. Chen Hao said. Then I'll have to help you explain. Wait for me. Fong Qing said to Chen Hao and then turned to speak to the disciples behind her. Hearing Fong Qing's words, the disciples looked at Fong Qing in surprise. They clearly did not understand when their big sister had become so kind. Those who were not familiar with her might be confused by Fong Qing's tranquil and refined temperament. However, if they truly thought Fong Qing was a gentle and soft kitten, the consequences would be too miserable. Thank you, senior sister. I'll have to trouble you again. It's no problem, Fong Qing said, and then brought Chen Hao into the mission hall. Do you see those 19 mission boards? Our new show hall's missions are divided into 19 levels according to the difficulty of the missions. They are also divided according to the cultivator's level. For example, the lowest level mission is a rank 1 monarch level mission. If you want to complete a mission like that, you need to be at least a rank 1 monarch. So on and so forth. Level 9 missions correspond to rank 9 monarchs. Level 9 missions correspond to rank 9 monarchs. Level 10 missions correspond to rank 1 monarchs. Level 18 missions correspond to rank 9 monarchs. Level 19 missions correspond to rank 1 monarchs. Level 19 missions correspond to rank 1 monarchs. Level 19 missions are usually special missions. Very few disciples will be able to satisfy the mission requirements, Fong Qing said. So you're saying that a rank 4 martial monarch, can only take on level 4 missions? Chen Hao said with a slight frown. That's not necessarily true. You can take on level 1 to level 3 missions. It's just that the rewards are small and not challenging. You can also take on missions above level 5 as long as you're not afraid of death. I heard from Grandpa that your combat strength is very strong, but don't even think about taking level 5 missions. What rank are you now? I'm still rank 4. Oh, Fong Qing was slightly surprised. However, when she saw Chen Hao's confident eyes, she understood what was going on. She smiled slightly and said, It's not bad to stabilize your realm. There are no disadvantages. You're a rank 4 martial monarch. At best, you can take on level 4 missions of medium difficulty. These mission levels are evaluated according to the average combat strength of the Eastern Continent's genius disciples in their respective realms. Your talent is one of the geniuses in our country. However, our Jinyuan kingdom is only a small country. Compared to the geniuses of other kingdoms and empires, we're far inferior. So, at best, you can take on level 4 missions that are relatively simple. It's already very dangerous for you. It's better to take level 3 missions to be safe. Under normal circumstances, most disciples will do missions with a lower rank. If it's a team, it's slightly higher, Fong Qing explained. Chen Hao was slightly dazed. Even he didn't expect the Royal New Show Hall's missions to contain so much information. Fong Qing's words made Chen Hao even more certain of his original conjecture. Jinyuan Kingdom was ultimately a small and weak country, and his amazing talent could only be considered a genius in Jinyuan Kingdom. The Eastern Continent that Fong Qing mentioned was an area divided by the Boundless Continent. Jinyuan Kingdom belonged to the Eastern Continent. The Boundless Continent was divided into 5 continents: East, West, South, North, and Central, as well as overseas islands. After Fong Qing explained to Chen Hao, she told Chen Hao to be careful and left by herself. The mission levels are evaluated according to the average combat strength of the Eastern Continent's genius disciples. Very good. Chen Hao took a deep breath. His eyes shone brightly as he walked toward the level 4 mission announcement board. Once he understood this, Chen Hao had a reference and a goal to work towards. Yo, isn't this a coward? When Chen Hao came to the level 4 mission announcement board and browsed through the missions with bright eyes, a sarcastic, contemptuous, and arrogant voice suddenly came from beside him. P.S. Please add it to your collection. Thank you. Recommending a very popular book, Shaolin Abbot of the 80s. Heaven doesn't open its eyes. It actually transmigrated a young man in his prime from the 80s to ancient times. It's fine if he transmigrated, but he transmigrated as a monk. It's fine if he transmigrated as a monk, but he had to be an abbot. It's fine if he's an abbot, but he even set up an abbot system to restrict me. Practice the virgin technique to great success. Make Shaolin the #1 sect in the world. Become the leader of the martial arts world. The system's requirements are too outrageous. I'm just an ordinary man from the 80s. I'm afraid I'm not qualified for such a great undertaking. But with this damn system's restrictions, I have to be qualified even if I'm not. The young man from the 80s cried and struggled. No one knew that the ultimate wish of this young abbot, who was the leader of the martial arts world, was to return to the secular world. Link frowny face book ID equals 2335457. Book name equals Shaolin Abbot of the 80s. Chapter 95. Chen Hao frowned slightly. Although the person did not name him, the voice was not unfamiliar. Who else could it be but the dog of the Dongfang family? Coward, I'm talking to you. In Xianhuang, ancient city, your asterisk had shrunk into your skull. When you returned to the new show hall, you shrunk into your dormitory. I thought you would always be a coward. Do you think I won't settle the score with you just because of this? I couldn't do anything to you back in your dorm, but don't think that fourth brother and I will forget the humiliation of that sword strike. Dongfang Ying stared at Chen Hao and said in a sinister voice, "Scram." Chen Hao turned around and stared coldly at the person who had just arrived. Brat, be careful. 2 peak 5th grade martial monarchs and 1 peak 6th grade martial monarch. At this moment, the voice of the treasure-hunting sword's spirit resounded in Chen Hao's mind. The treasure-hunting sword spirit's powerful perception wasn't just great at sensing spirit herbs and treasures. It also had an incomparable accuracy towards cultivators' realms. It's good to be strong, Chen Hao said in his mind. There were 3 people in total. 2 of them were Dongfang Ying and Dongfang Jie. After the 2 of them returned from the Xianhuang ancient city, they had broken through to peak rank 5 martial monarchs. The other person standing in the middle was Dongfang Zhan, whose cultivation was higher than the 2 of them. He was a peak rank 6 martial monarch. When Dongfang Jun and the others saw Chen Hao's group of 3 in Xianhuang ancient city, it was already the end of their training. They wanted to play the hero, saving the damsel in distress and trample on Chen Hao, but they didn't even have the chance. However, when they returned, they found out that Chen Hao and the other 2 had foolishly used the 5-element spirit pills in exchange for level 3 benefits. They then entered the unique art library to choose secret manuals and began to cultivate in seclusion. They had no chance at all. Dongfang Jun and the others estimated that it would take at least 3 months for the 3 of them to come out of seclusion. However, he did not expect to meet Chen Hao here at this time. At this moment, Dongfang Jun was in closed-door cultivation to make a breakthrough to Martial Emperor. However, the 3 of them were not afraid of Chen Hao at all. 2 peak rank 5 and 1 peak rank 6. What was there to be afraid of? Yo, you want us to scram? What a big tone. Do you think you're still in your dorm? Huh. Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Today, I will let you know that the disciples of the Dongfang family are not people that a little trash like you can provoke. Come out with me if you have the guts. Don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you're a coward. I have plenty of chances to break your shell. Dongfang Ying said provocatively. A challenge? Very well, I accept. Chen Hao's handsome face flashed with a touch of coldness when he saw countless people surrounding him in an instant. His voice became even calmer as he spoke. At the same time, he turned around and walked out of the hall. Everyone could clearly sense the powerful battle intent emanating from Chen Hao's body. So what if they were rank 5 or 6 martial emperors? Chen Hao hadn't fought a real battle since he had reached the 4th grade emperor level. Since he had come knocking on his door, he might as well use this battle to test his combat strength. You have guts. I love beating gutsy bastards like you until you're weak and kneeling on the ground begging for mercy. Haha. 3rd brother, why don't you let me do it? I'm already excited. Dongfang Jie was overjoyed when he saw that Chen Hao had agreed to Dongfang Ying's request. If Chen Hao hadn't accepted, they wouldn't have been able to do anything to Chen Hao so brazenly. Now, It was obvious that Dongfang Ying's provocation had succeeded. Of course, he was secretly pleased with himself and added fuel to the fire. Chun Hao, who was walking out, paused slightly. Without turning his head, he said, "I don't mind if the three of you come at me together. It'll save me the trouble." Shoo! The crowd, which had already begun to discuss spiritedly, suddenly burst into a wave of boos. It was already surprising that Chun Hao dared to accept the challenge. Now, he actually said such arrogant words. Some of the intermediate and advanced disciples who had come to watch the show shook their heads slightly. They looked at Chun Hao with a trace of pity in their eyes. As people who had experienced it, who hadn't seen the strength of the Dongfang family's disciples. Many of them had even been bullied by the Dongfang family's disciples. Those who could endure it were still all right. Those who pretended to be stubborn were basically nowhere to be found. They didn't even know how they died. Endure it for a while, and the wind will be calm. Take a step back, and the sky will be clear. Sigh, why are the disciples nowadays becoming more and more arrogant? The Dongfang family's disciples are the ones who should not be provoked. They are much more ruthless than the Zhao family and the Bailey family. What a pity. Yeah, who dares to offend the Dongfang family? Each and every one of them, cough, cough. One of them wanted to say something, but shut his mouth halfway. The Dongfang family was one of the three major families in the Jinyuan kingdom. Before their disciples entered the royal new show hall, the ultimate techniques that they cultivated were incomparable to ordinary people. Basically, any disciple of the Dongfang family had the ability to challenge those of a higher rank with their powerful ultimate techniques. They indeed had the right to be arrogant and overbearing. However, this wasn't the strongest thing about the Dongfang family. The strongest thing was that the Dongfang family's disciples never cared about face or principles. They were domineering, arrogant, shameless, and unscrupulous. It was also because of this reason that these disciples didn't dare to speak ill of the Dongfang family. They were afraid that if the rumors were to spread to the ears of the Dongfang family's disciples, it would be disastrous. This Chun Hao, let's not associate with him anymore in the future. Among the crowd, Zhuge Qingyun and a few other disciples from the Lancang province were among them. At this moment, Zhuge Qingyun gazed at Chun Hao's back view and spoke indifferently, but without any doubt. "Boss, this is needless to say. We are clear. We don't think highly of this brat. He doesn't even know the ways of the world and might die at any moment. Associating with him is unlucky." Yeah, it was the same during the hall selection. Junior sister Xiaowu clearly agreed to go with boss, but it was because of him. Hearing this disciple's words, Zhuge Qingyun helplessly shook his head and thought in his heart, "There will be a day when junior sister Xiaowu knows how good I am." Before Zhuge Qingyun met Helian Wuzi, he had never fallen in love. Perhaps it was because he had never fallen in love that he firmly believed that Helian Wuzi was his destined woman. He would never forget how excited he was when he saw Helian Wuzi's ice-cold and beautiful face for the first time. Although he restrained himself very well and others couldn't tell, he deeply understood that it was love at first sight. Love at first sight. "Let's go, we'll go out and take a look." Zhuge Qingyun muttered to himself for a while and said softly, "Third brother, fourth brother, don't lower your guard. I've heard that this brat had already advanced to rank 4 martial monarch when he was in Xianhuang ancient city. Right now, I'm afraid that he has already advanced to rank 5. His aura isn't any weaker than yours." Dongfang Jun wasn't present, so Dongfang Zhan, who was temporarily acting as the leader, walked between the two of them and reminded them in a low voice. "Don't worry, second brother. How could this brat compare to our Dongfang family's secret techniques? Last time, we were simply unprepared and suffered a loss. Right now, the two of us have both advanced to peak rank 5. Why should we be afraid of him? Second brother, third brother, let me go first." Even if that brat's battle prowess is really strong, he still arrogantly said that he wanted us to go at him together. He's really looking for death. At worst, if I can't do it, third brother will do it. If third brother can't do it, second brother, you'll do it. I guarantee that you'll trample this brat until he's unrecognizable. Dongfang Jia said in a low voice with a sinister expression. "All right, I'll let you show off your might first. Damn, today's luck is really too good. This year, our Dongfang family's glory will start from today's battle. Ha! Dongfang Ying said. The two of them didn't feel that their conversation was shameless at all. They even felt that it was natural for them to fight in turns. This was something that couldn't be helped. The reason why the Dongfang family's disciples were so shameless and rude was just as Chunhao guessed. It was related to their upbringing. What was shamelessness? They didn't care about face at all. The only thing they cared about was the final victory. As long as they could win, it didn't matter what method they used. After arriving at a spacious plaza, the disciples of the mission hall basically all followed them to watch the show. Especially the junior disciples, not a single one was left out. There were many challenges in the Royal New Show Hall, and they happened basically every day. However, there weren't many challenges that were contradictory in nature. The main challenge was a ranking challenge. Every year, there would be a ranking for the junior disciples, intermediate disciples, and advanced disciples in the end-of-year competition. Anyone who was ranked in the bottom 50 for 2 consecutive years would lose the qualification to be a disciple of the Royal New Show Hall. The challenge was the only chance to salvage the situation. For example, if a disciple was ranked in the bottom 50 for this year's end-of-year competition, he would be able to replace the disciple who was ranked in the top 50 for next year's end-of-year competition. Even if he was still ranked in the bottom 50 for the next year's end-of-year competition, it would only be the first time. It was also because of this reason that there were many challenges in the Royal New Show Hall. This was also the most effective way to motivate the disciples. Faced with the countless onlookers, the 3 Dongfang family members were very excited. Dongfang Jie's expression was even more arrogant as he stood in front of the cold Chunhao. Boom boom. 2 explosions sounded. Dongfang Jie and Chunhao simultaneously surged the elemental energy around their bodies. A thick brown elemental energy protective aura instantly condensed around the two of them. Rank 4 Martial Monarch? Or Rank 4 Martial Monarch? Ha! Sensing the fluctuation of elemental energy after Chunhao released his protective energy barrier, and then looking at the color of Chunhao's elemental energy, Dongfang Jie immediately laughed arrogantly. The onlookers were also very surprised. Since Chunhao was so arrogant, most people thought that he should at least have some strength. However, he was actually only a rank 4 Martial Monarch. Dongfang Jie, who was obviously the weakest of the 3, was actually a rank 5 Martial Monarch. In addition, the Dongfang family's disciples were very strong. The result was very obvious. I thought you had advanced to rank 5 or rank 6. You're just a mere rank 4 Martial Monarch, yet you dare to be so arrogant. Ha ha! Come eat my palm. Along with Dongfang Jie's loud shout, violent elemental energy surged out. Dongfang Jie's clothes fluttered even though there was no wind. The brown elemental energy wreaked havoc around his body, causing the air within a radius of several zhang to churn violently. He suddenly stomped his feet and sent out a palm strike, toppling the mountains and overturning the seas. The first attack was the Dongfang family's rank 9 secret art, Mountain Toppling Palm. It was very powerful and imposing. Boom, boom, boom. A huge brown elemental energy palm instantly exploded the surrounding space and attacked Chunhao with the force of toppling the mountains and overturning the seas. Second update. The last chapter of the public chapter will be published in the early hours of the morning. I am very nervous. I will update the next chapter when the time comes. Tomorrow, there will be 4 chapters with over 12,000 words. Brothers and sisters who support Dark Mountain, please support the official subscription. At the same time, please give your guaranteed monthly votes to Dark Mountain to give Dark Mountain some enthusiasm and encouragement. Thank you very much. When the time comes, the related chapters will also be updated. Brothers and sisters, please take a look. Chapter 96. Break for me. Chunhao, who was already prepared, suddenly pushed his origin power to the extreme. He didn't dodge at all, and suddenly punched out with both fists. In an instant, The fist shadows were like a string of cannonballs, like a torrential river, violently bombarding Dongfang Jie's huge palm shadow. Bang, 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 bang. The continuous sound of air exploding rose and fell. Dongfang Jie's violent attacks were completely shattered before they could reach Chen Hao. The origin power wreaked havoc, and a fierce wind rose. The surging power forced the spectating disciples with lower cultivations to activate their protective auras to defend themselves. Dongfang Jie's expression changed. How is this possible? My mountain-shattering palm is a 9th-rank secret art. I've already pushed it to the extreme. How can it break a puny 4th-rank martial king? Dongfang Jie knew the speed of Chen Hao's sword, so he wanted to use his absolute strength as a 5th-rank martial king to completely suppress Chen Hao. However, he didn't expect Chen Hao to break it so easily. Star-shaking fist. What was even more unexpected was that after breaking apart Dongfang Jie's toppling mountain palm, Chen Hao actually didn't stop in the slightest. Those fist shadows suddenly disappeared, and his clothes fluttered as he charged towards Dongfang Jie like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, his right fist shone with a resplendent origin energy light that was condensed to the extreme, as if it had transformed into the stars in the sky, and he punched out. At this moment, Dongfang Jie felt a terrifying pressure. He knew that he had been targeted by Chen Hao's fist intent, so he didn't dare to hesitate anymore. Jade shattering claw. Dongfang Jie's contracted eyes were filled with viciousness, and a wildness to vent his anger. His 5 fingers abruptly open up into claws, and the brown essence force actually caused his claws to sparkle with jade-like brilliance. Meeting Chen Hao's fist head-on. Star-shaking fist? Isn't that the remnant scroll on the 3rd floor of the secret art library? This brat actually learned it? Jade shattering claw. Dongfang family superior 9th-rank secret art. As soon as the two of them came up, they started to fight in close combat, which shocked everyone. At this moment, when the fist and claw collided, many intermediate and advanced disciples' eyes slightly narrowed as they thought in their hearts. Chen Hao let out a cold snort with a cold expression. Unexpectedly, he did not change the path of his fist and brazenly met the attack head-on. Ding! Rumble! The moment the fist and the claw collided, there was actually a sound similar to the sound of metal clashing and a terrifying explosion of air. The scene that everyone imagined of Chen Hao's fist being locked did not happen. Instead, the two figures suddenly retreated. Pooh! Dongfang Jie, who was retreating, felt something sweet in his throat and actually spat out a mouthful of blood. Even Old Four's jade shattering claw was broken. Dongfang Zhan and Dongfang Ying's faces suddenly turned ugly. Although they had expected Chen Hao to be very strong, they had not expected him to be so strong. Challenging someone of a higher cultivation level than him, and even fighting him head-on, suppressing Dongfang Jie with absolute power. The surrounding disciples also felt that it was inconceivable. The star-shaking fist is actually so strong, no wonder it's so hard to cultivate. Many intermediate and advanced disciples had tried to cultivate the star-shaking fist, but only a few of them were true geniuses. At this moment, seeing that Chen Hao had actually used the star-shaking fist to break Dongfang Jie's jade shattering claw, and that Dongfang Jie was a 5th-rank martial king, they were extremely shocked. Clang! Dongfang Jie, who was retreating, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His expression became even crazier as he suddenly pulled out the sword from his back. The sword was 3 feet and 3 inches long and 1 and 8 inches wide. It was not as wide as Mouyui's greatsword, but the sword's body was suffused with a chilling aura. The material of the sword was obviously much better than Mouyui's greatsword. Although it had not reached the level of spiritual treasure, it was definitely not an ordinary metal. Chen Hao and the other disciples who came from poor families could not afford it. Perhaps only the disciples of the 3 great families could have such a treasure sword. Droughtland Thunder. With the treasure sword in hand, Dongfang Jie's aura suddenly increased. He raised the sword and waved it. In an instant, rays of sharp sword light violently shot out like lightning. Rumble, the hard rock ground around Chun Hao was instantly filled with countless pieces of rubble and smoke. It was as if dense bombs had exploded at the same time. Chun Hao's figure was completely submerged in the smoke of rubble, forcibly stopping Chun Hao from continuing to attack. Bang, bang, bang. Chun Hao's fist shadows came one after another. Other than his eyes slightly shrinking, he actually did not have the slightest bit of fear as he shattered the sword light, shooting towards his body with his fist. Coward, you are indeed very strong, but if this is all you have, then obediently kneel down and kowtow to me. Thunderclap, ninth heaven. Dongfang Jie was unforgiving after gaining the upper hand. He used the highest sword skill he had comprehended, Thunderclap Sword, to the last level of Thunderclap, ninth heaven. Violent origin power condensed into a sword aura. This, man and sword became one as it pierced towards Chun Hao as fast as lightning. In your dreams, Chun Hao, who seemed to be completely suppressed, suddenly trembled. With a boom, his protective aura turned into a brown flame, burning fiercely. His entire aura suddenly rose sharply. Star-shattering fist. Hiss. Rumble. A fist that was condensed to the extreme was like a dazzling shooting star, and it shattered the numerous dense sword lights with irresistible force. Dongfang Jie, who had victory within his grasp, never would have imagined that Chun Hao would actually strangely dodge his sword, and he was utterly unable to dodge in time before he let out a shrill cry and was blasted flying by Chun Hao's shocking punch. Pooh! Like a kite with a broken string, Dongfang Jie was still flying in the air when he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fourth brother. The change happened too quickly. When Dongfang Zhan and Dongfang Ying reacted, it was already too late to make a move. F*CK, your mother. I want you to die. The two of them caught Dongfang Jie. Seeing that his face was as white as a sheet and had obviously suffered heavy injuries, Dongfang Ying immediately shouted angrily and was about to rush out. Let me. Dongfang Zhan pulled Dongfang Ying and said coldly. Powerful to actually win against someone of a higher level. The star-shaking fist is really powerful. For this Chun Hao to be able to learn it, his talent is really not simple. Unfortunately, I'm afraid he won't be able to win this time no matter how strong he is. The crowd was discussing spiritedly. When they saw the rank 6 martial monarch Dongfang Zhan appear, they knew that the battle was about to end. As for the new disciples, they were cursing the Dongfang family in a low voice. Not only did they take turns to fight, they even bullied the weak. It was obvious that these people had not experienced the shamelessness of the Dongfang family's disciples. Chun Hao is actually this strong. When he was with us, he was only a martial master, this talent. The disciples beside Zhuge Qingyun were obviously even more shocked. In less than half a year, Chun Hao, who they thought had a special physique and extremely high talent, but was unable to withstand a single blow, had already grown to a level that most of them could not match. Clang. Without giving much time for discussion, Dongfang Zhan unsheathed his sword with an arrogant and cold expression. His eyes were filled with boundless ruthlessness as he stared at the uninjured Chun Hao. His sword was exactly the same as Dongfang Ying's sword. It was obviously a treasured sword of the same level. No expression could be seen on Chun Hao's face. Only the corner of his mouth was slightly raised, telling everyone that he was filled with disdain and arrogance from his bones. Without making any sound, he unsheathed his sword from the simple ironwood sword sheath on his back. What made everyone flabbergasted was that Chun Hao's sword sheath was made of ironwood, but his sword was also made of ironwood. Ironwood was incomparably hard, comparable to steel. However, it was still made of wood. No matter how hard or sharp it was still limited. Under normal circumstances, ironwood swords were only used by the disciples of the family when they were practicing their swordsmanship to avoid unnecessary injuries. However, the sword that Chun Hao carried on his back was actually an ironwood sword. This was out of everyone's expectations. However, this ironwood sword seemed to have an unusual aura in everyone's eyes. The body of the sword was as smooth as jade, faintly emitting a metallic luster. There was not the slightest flaw, even the hilt was the same. There was no blade, and the tip of the sword was smooth. However, the feeling that it gave off was something that no one had ever seen before. Prepare to die. Hiss. Just as Dongfang Zhan finished his sentence, his body extended and like a wisp of green smoke, he appeared 3 meters away from Chun Hao. The treasured sword in his hand shook violently. In an instant, rays of resplendent, dense brown sword radiance burst out as he thrust his sword forward. So fast, waves of exclamations erupted from the crowd. Ding, 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 ding. However, what was even more shocking was yet to come. A series of dense metal clashing sounds suddenly rang out. Sword radiance shot out in all directions, blocking Chun Hao and Dongfang Zhan's flashing figures. Dongfang Zhan was originally an expert swordsman. Speed was his foundation. The same sword technique in his hands would definitely be more powerful. This was not something that Dongfang Ying and Dongfang Jie could compare to. Even Dongfang Jun was not as good as him in this aspect. Therefore, when Dongfang Ying and Dongfang Jie had their throats slit by Chun Hao's fast sword, he was looking forward to competing with Chun Hao to see whose sword was faster. Therefore, the moment he entered the arena, he used his peak level 9 sword technique, Lightning Sword, which he had cultivated to perfection. Ding ding, boom boom. The two of them tossed and turned, advancing and retreating, forcing the crowd to also move back and forth on the huge field. Such an exciting collision of sword techniques caused some of the higher-grade experts, and even the martial emperors, to suck in a breath of cold air. What powerful talent in the way of the sword! Although their cultivations are not high, their sword techniques are actually so exquisite. Roar! Hiss! Dongfang Zhan was extremely shocked. Originally, he had wanted to use his fast sword, which he was proud of, to injure his opponent severely. However, he did not expect that Chun Hao, who was only holding an ironwood sword, was not the slightest bit slower than him. In fact, Chun Hao was even faster than him. One had to know that he had attacked first, while Chun Hao had defended himself from behind. One had taken the initiative, while the other had been passive. These were two completely different concepts. However, Chun Hao had blocked all of his sword techniques without missing a single one. With such a reaction and speed, Dongfang Zhan did not dare to be careless anymore. He suddenly shouted loudly and released all of his violent origin energy of a peak level 6 martial emperor. The sword pierced out as if it was tearing the void. The brilliant sword light carried an unparalleled sharpness and pressure as it enveloped Chun Hao. Chun Hao's pupils suddenly contracted. Even he did not expect that Dongfang Zhan, a level 6 martial emperor, would be so powerful. Originally, he, who had advanced to the peak of level 4 martial emperor, did not plan to use his mental energy. After all, with his physical body's talent, he had the powerful ability to challenge those of higher grade just by relying on his cultivation. However, at this moment, Chun Hao knew that if he did not use his mental energy, he would be the one to lose. Hiss! The brilliant origin energy of the ironwood sword suddenly pulsed in an extremely strange manner. Its color did not change in the slightest. In the eyes of the spectating experts, they only thought that Chun Hao was temporarily taking a breath. However, P.S. First update, please guarantee a minimum monthly vote. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 97. Pung. Without any warning, the moment the ironwood sword in Chun Hao's hand touched the tip of Dongfang Zhan's sword, it exploded. Chun Hao's figure strangely dodged to the left. Boom, boom, boom. Puff, puff, puff. Ah! The fragments of the ironwood sword were like incomparably sharp, hidden weapons. They bombarded Dongfang Zhan's protective aura like locusts, causing a dense explosion. 3 of the larger fragments contained extremely condensed origin energy and broke through Dongfang Zhan's protective aura. One fragment neatly pierced Dongfang Zhan's wrist that was holding the sword, while the other 2 fragments directly bombarded his knees. Dongfang Zhan screamed miserably. His sword slipped out of his hand, and he lost control of his legs. His body that was charging forward suddenly fell to the ground like a dog eating shit. Moreover, under the dumbfounded gazes of everyone, he tumbled for a distance of 30 meters before curling up on the ground like a pile of mud. Second brother, Dongfang cried out in horror. She could not believe what she had just seen. This is too vicious, isn't it? No wonder he used the ironwood sword. What do you know? If you have the ability, try shattering the ironwood sword. This guy called Chun Hao's origin energy is extremely terrifying. It is definitely several times more powerful than his cultivation base. Chun Hao snorted coldly. Without looking at Dongfang Zhan, who was struggling to stand up, he suddenly grabbed the sword that had slipped out of Dongfang Zhan's hand. A claw formed by origin energy whizzed out. What surprised everyone was that the sword actually flew directly into Chun Hao's hand from a distance of several feet. Buzz. The moment the sword entered Chun Hao's hand, it let out a clear buzz. Chun Hao waved the sword and pointed it at Dongfang Ying, who was the only one who was still intact. His voice was calm, but filled with a sense of arrogance. It's your turn. You. Dongfang Ying was both embarrassed and angry. However, under Chun Hao's awe-inspiring aura, she did not dare to face him head-on. Instead, she was so frightened that she took a step back. Ah, what a good-for-nothing. At this moment, a strange laughter suddenly came from the crowd, and a figure stepped out from the crowd, full of contempt and disdain. The disciples of the Dongfang family have always challenged people above their level. TSK, you 3 are really mutants. You actually let people succeed in challenging people above their level. Ha! As expected, those who follow Dongfang Jun are getting worse and worse. Dongfang Zhan, you're at least a peak 6-stage martial monarch, right? Isn't he known as the fastest sword user in the younger generation of the Dongfang family? I think it's more appropriate to call you the fastest spear. You've only taken 2 shots, and you've already withered. You've really brought shame to our Dongfang family. You. Hearing this person's words, Dongfang Zhan and the other 2's expressions changed, especially Dongfang Zhan, who had been heavily injured by Chun Hao. His pale face turned into the color of a pig's liver, and he almost spat out blood. Me? What about me? Am I wrong? A mere rank 4 martial monarch. The only thing he has is a slightly stronger physical body. It seems that his control over his origin energy is pretty good as well. However, how could a rank 6 martial monarch like you not be able to deal with someone like him? He was simply a pig. If he followed a pig, he would become a pig. If you had already pledged your allegiance to me, how could you be so weak? Dongfang Jian. What do you mean? Dongfang Zhan trembled as he stood up. He angrily stared at the person who had come. The person who had come was none other than the Dongfang family's disciple, Dongfang Jian, the head disciple of the fierce Sun Hall. What do I mean? What can this young master mean? Dongfang Jian said with a face full of ridicule. At the same time, he looked at Chun Hao and said, Brat, if you have the guts, then defeat Dongfang Jun for me. Don't worry, although this young master is the Dongfang family's most talented disciple and has the most hope of becoming the next patriarch, I will definitely not interfere. Our new show hall will also not allow it. However, it's hard to say for other places or in the future. Of course, if you can defeat Dongfang Jun, this young master will not pursue the responsibility of injuring these trash of the Dongfang family. Chun Hao slightly frowned. This person's aura was extremely powerful. Although he did not deliberately release it, his every movement carried a power that Chun Hao could not contend against. Even if Chun Hao were to reveal all of his trump cards, it would still not be enough. Martial Emperor, and most definitely a high-rank Martial Emperor. This aura was many times more powerful than rank 1 Martial Emperor Zhao Yunfei's. This was what Chun Hao was truly worried about. Although Dongfang Jun, a rank 9 Martial Emperor, gave him enormous pressure. Chun Hao was no longer afraid of him after returning from Xianhuang Ancient City. However, Chun Hao knew very well that the Dongfang family's disciples were not just these 4 new disciples. Every year, the Dongfang family would enter the new show hall. If you were to be too ruthless towards Dongfang Jun and them, it would likely affect all of them. The current Chun Hao did not have the ability to do so. Thus, even in the battle earlier, he had held back and did not attack ruthlessly. Funny, the most hope of becoming the next patriarch? Dongfang Jian. Don't forget that our eldest Dongfang Jun is the son of the current patriarch. His aunt is even an inner court disciple of super sect. What qualifications do you have to compete? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because your cultivation is high. Otherwise, you will suffer in the future. Humph. Before Chun Hao could say anything, Dongfang Zhan angrily said. Dongfang Jian's ridiculing expression immediately became extremely sinister. It was clear that Dongfang Zhan had touched his sore spot. Originally, his talent was undoubtedly the most dazzling new star in the Dongfang family. He was also the most competitive candidate for the next patriarch of the Dongfang family. No one could match him. However, Dongfang Jun, who had once been an ordinary person, had displayed astonishing talent after his aunt, who was an inner disciple of a super sect, had returned to her family. Even he was inferior to Dongfang Jun. Hatred. How could he not hate him? He hated that his father was not the patriarch. He hated that his aunt was not an expert of a super sect. He hated that Dongfang Jun, who was originally mediocre, became a genius because of his birth. Very good, Dongfang Zhan. You are merely Dongfang Jun's dog. You actually dare to bite me? Humph. When the family test begins, you better not meet me. Otherwise, you could just wait to become trash. You? Dongfang Zhan's complexion immediately turned deathly pale. He felt that he was too impulsive. The family test was not a simple competition. There was no chance to surrender, even if one wanted to. And now, he had angered Dongfang Jian. If he were to really meet Dongfang Jian, boy, remember my words. Although they are trash and dogs of the Dongfang family, they are not people that you can defeat. If you are able to defeat Dongfang Jun in the year-end ranking battle, I will not bother about it anymore. Otherwise, you will know that even a dog of the Dongfang family is not someone that you can provoke. Humph. Dongfang Jian no longer paid attention to Dongfang Zhan and the others. He suddenly looked at Chun Hao and said, his sharp gaze was like 2 sharp swords. It caused the hearts of the surrounding people to tremble, much less Chun Hao, who bore the brunt of his gaze. After saying those words, Dongfang Jian flicked his sleeve and left. The instant he turned around, he casually grabbed at Chun Hao. Whoosh! The sword that Chun Hao had just obtained flew out unstoppably. With a poo sound, it was as fast as lightning. It stuck close to Dongfang Zhan's scalp and pierced into the hard rock ground in front of him. So powerful. Dongfang Jian is said to be the most talented disciple of the 3 great families' younger generation. Sure enough, his reputation is well-deserved. His strength. I'm afraid that he is above rank 7 Martial Emperor. Too powerful. Peak rank 8 Martial Emperor. The head disciple of the fierce Sun Hall. Originally, he was the disciple that had the most hope of obtaining the position of the Dongfang family's family head. However, because of Dongfang Jun, things have changed. Although Dongfang Jun, who is several years younger than him, is currently weaker than him, he will likely surpass him in a few years. You all heard what I said earlier. Dongfang Jun's father is the Dongfang family's family head. His aunt is an expert from a super sect. She is a legendary existence. It is said that Dongfang Jun was originally very mediocre. However, his aunt used some sort of profound technique to forcibly raise his cultivation talent by several levels. Even Dongfang Jian is inferior to him. I'm afraid that the Dongfang family's family head will fall into Dongfang Jun's hands in the future. No wonder Dongfang Jian's tone was like Dongfang Jun's enemy. So that's the case. Some of the experienced and knowledgeable disciples in the crowd started to discuss. Dongfang Jin's appearance had diluted the shock that Chen Hao brought to them by a lot. At this moment, Chen Hao was tightly clenching his teeth. His body was slightly trembling. His gaze was fixed on his hand that was dripping with blood. However, his heart was in a perilous situation. Ever since their souls had fused, even though Chen Hao was still completely focused on his cultivation and had never truly relaxed, only at this moment did he truly understand that after losing Xiao Jihan, who had once brought him enormous pressure, the current him had unknowingly birthed a trace of arrogance from the depths of his heart. A trace of a self-mocking smile gradually appeared on Chen Hao's face. There was no hatred, no humiliation. There was only a lump of flame, a burning flame. Ignoring the three trash that had completely lost their will to fight, Chen Hao, under the gazes of the crowd, did not care about his hand that was still bleeding. His footwork was steady, and his figure was as straight as a sword as he walked toward the mission issuance hall. Dongfang Jin's casual grab had snatched away the treasured sword in his hand. Furthermore, it had even shattered his hand. However, he was thankful to Dongfang Jin. That was because Dongfang Jin had given him a warning. Dongfang Jin's talent is indeed astonishing. This year's year-end competition should be even more exciting. Amen. Fierce Sun Hall's Dongfang Jin, Cold Moon Hall's by Li Shi, Cold Star Hall's Zhao Yunlong. Our new show hall's eldest disciple should be one of the three. For now, it seems that Zhao Yunlong has the greatest hope. However, there is still half a year's time. This Dongfang Jin cannot be underestimated. Unfortunately, there is still a gap between the three of them and Dongfang Ting. I'm afraid that they will not be able to reach the next level. After Chen Hao left, on the top floor of a palace not far away, two extremely powerful old men stared at the dispersing crowd and chatted. These two people were one of the new show hall's hall master and one of the three vice hall masters who had appeared during the hall selection. Yeah, it's truly a pity. In the end, our Jinyuan kingdom is too small and barren. However, it's possible for Dongfang Jun. With his relationship with Dongfang Ting and Dongfang Ting's return 2 years ago, she did not hesitate to use her boundless true origin and top-grade spiritual pills to cleanse Dongfang Jun's body. It can be said that before reaching rank 9 martial emperor, he should not have any obstacles. In just 2 short years, he, who was originally mediocre, rose from rank 4 martial warrior to rank 9 martial emperor. With 5 more years, it's not impossible for him to become a martial saint. Second update. Today's fourth update is 12,000 words. The third update is tomorrow morning, around 8 o'clock. On the first day of publication, please subscribe, monthly vote, recommend, and reward. Please support me. Please give Wushan some encouragement. Please give your guaranteed monthly votes to Wushan. Thank you. Also, thank you for yesterday's rewards and comments from 12 friends, Wine Powder, Passionate Love Carrot, Pyron Delta Mega Sigma, Sakura Dance, Startling Images and Dreams, Dreaming Already Here, Drunk in the Wind, A Dream of Old Scenery, Farewell to Maple Night, Jade Tree Blossoms, Endless Stream, Clear Stream of Rice Wine. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 98. Please guarantee the monthly tickets and subscriptions. Thank you. Sigh. The hall master shook his head. He frowned and said, although it would be good to be able to reach that level, a single Dongfang Ting has already caused the Dongfang family to be like this. If another Dongfang Jun were to appear, I'm afraid that even the imperial family would not be able to contain the Dongfang family. That's true. The Dongfang family is truly. Hall Master, how is that little guy called Chen Hao from earlier? He looks 16 or 17 years old, but is actually only 13 years old. Huanqi thinks very highly of him. I also feel that there is a lot of hope. The Vice Hall Master said. Huanqi also told me that he still needs more time to observe that boy. Although it is rare to have a constitution that cultivates both martial and intent, it might not be a good thing. Judging from his appearance, he should have chosen to major in martial arts. That is quite wise. To be able to become a rank 4 martial monarch at the age of 13 and possess such battle power, he could definitely be considered an extremely rare genius. He is not inferior to Dongfang Jian by Li Shi and Zhao Yunlong. If he can become a rank 6 martial emperor within 2 years, then there is hope. If not, he can at most reach the level of Dongfang Jian by Li Shi and by Li Shi. After all, after becoming a martial emperor, he could be stuck at every bottleneck for a year or even longer. The Hall Master shook his head and said, "Hall Master, you might not know this." "Oh?" The Hall Master frowned. "What is it?" The star shaking fist. "That little guy has already cultivated it to the pinnacle." The Vice Hall Master said, "I can see that. Although the remnant star shaking fist is extremely difficult to comprehend, there are several people in our new show hall who have cultivated it to the pinnacle. It is not strange. As the Great Hall Master, you might not have the energy to care about such trivial matters. You probably don't know that this little guy has only borrowed the star shaking fist for 2 months, right?" "What?" The new show hall master was clearly shocked. He said, "You're saying that this little guy only used 2 months to cultivate the remnant star shaking fist to the pinnacle?" "That's right." Chen Hao had no idea that because of Huangqi, he had already entered the new show hall's upper echelon's line of sight. "Chen Hao." "Amen?" "Senior Fong, why have you come back?" When Chen Hao had just walked a short distance into the mission hall, he was surprised to see Fong Qing and a few people chasing after him. "I didn't go far before I heard that someone was challenging me. I didn't expect it to be you." Fong Qing's eyes, which seemed to be shrouded in smoke, said with a trace of surprise at this moment, "Your combat power is so strong. Is it serious?" Chen Hao shook his head slightly and said, "It's just a superficial wound. It doesn't matter. Why don't you join us for a quest? We accepted a multiplayer mission. Besides, this is your first time doing a mission, so it's inevitable that you won't be familiar with many things. Why don't you take this mission as well? If something happens, we can take care of each other." Fong Qing stated her purpose. Originally, Fong Qing was quite appreciative of her grandfather when he mentioned Chen Hao. Therefore, when she met Chen Hao, she expressed her goodwill. But that was all. After all, there was still quite a gap between Chen Hao's strength and her. But earlier, Chen Hao's complete victory over Dongfang Zhan caused Fong Qing to be shocked. Only then did she truly have the intention to rope him in. "What's the rank? What's the mission?" Chen Hao asked. The strength of Fong Qing and the others had already been investigated by Chen Hao with his sharp soul perception. Fong Qing and the other youth were intent, and should be the 2 strongest people in their team. Although it was difficult to see through intent after they restrained their auras, Chen Hao could determine that the 2 of them should have reached the 8th stage intent emperor realm. The other 2 men and 1 woman were all martial artists, 7th stage martial emperors. There's no rank. It's a special mission to find ruins. Excavate ruins? Yes, the ruins that our new show hall's disciples train in, like the Xinhuang ancient city that you went to last time, were mostly discovered through this kind of mission. If you can find the entrance to the ruins, the reward will be very generous. However, the probability of finding it is very low, so there's basically no need to consider the reward. But there are many disciples who accept this kind of mission. Fong Qing paused for a moment and continued. First, this kind of mission doesn't require much strength. As long as you can resist the demonic beasts in the area, you can accept it. Also, whether you can find the entrance to the ruins or not has little to do with strength. The most important thing is your own luck and opportunity. So, many people want to try their luck. Second, you can see the strength of the disciples of other countries. Usually, the genius disciples of the neighboring countries will also participate in this kind of mission. So, this kind of mission also has a lot of danger. Of course, as long as you avoid the disciples of other countries and don't have any conflicts, there won't be much danger. Are you going or not? If you go, we'll wait for you. If not, we'll set off. I'll think about it. Senior sister, don't wait for me. Go first. If you can't find a suitable mission, I'll catch up with you. Chen Hao seemed to be a little hesitant. Okay, then we'll go first. Remember, don't accept missions that are too advanced. First, do simple missions to familiarize yourself. Yes, thank you, senior sister. After bidding farewell to Fong Qing and the others, Chun Hao's eyes shone with a bright light. His figure flashed, and he quickly went to the mission hall. After a while, he found a mission to find ruins on the Level 19 Special Mission Board. Location: Magic Cloud Mountain, Jinyuan Kingdom, Deqian Kingdom, Jingyun Kingdom, and Dedian Kingdom. Mission time: the aura of ruins is expected to appear frequently within 2 months. Mission reward: cultivate in the Spirit Gathering Cave in the New Show Hall for half a year. Choose any 3 spiritual level unique skills from the New Show Hall, 1 intermediate storage ring, 10 level 8 spiritual medicine, 1,000 level 7 spiritual medicine, and 10,000 level 6 spiritual medicine. Shoo! Seeing the rewards, Chun Hao gasped. Any one of the rewards was extremely shocking. When he arrived at the New Show Hall in the Spirit Gathering Cave, Chun Hao already knew that only the chief disciple of the 3 halls was qualified to cultivate in the Spirit Gathering Cave for a month. The chief disciple of the intermediate disciples could cultivate in the Spirit Gathering Cave for 2 months. The chief disciple of the advanced disciples could cultivate in the Spirit Gathering Cave for 3 months, and the chief disciple of the New Show Hall for half a year. This was equivalent to becoming the chief disciple of New Excellence Hall and receiving a huge reward. As for the spiritual level unique skills, it was beyond the range of level 1 to level 9, and he could choose any 3. The worst rewards were the intermediate storage ring and spiritual medicine. But even these 2 items were very attractive to Chun Hao. Of course, Chun Hao was clearly aware that this assignment required extremely great fortune and karmic luck, and obtaining it was absolutely not a simple matter. Otherwise, the rewards would not be so generous. Don't get your hopes up. Most relics are left behind by super experts, and they have extremely powerful seals. Although I have an extraordinary sense for spiritual treasures, I can't pass through these seals that contain the supreme laws of the world. This is a great opportunity and great luck left behind by an ancient expert. Only those who have this kind of opportunity and luck can find it. However, the Demon Cloud Mountain range runs through several big countries. There are countless spiritual herbs and demonic beasts. You can go in and cultivate. At this moment, the treasure-hunting sword's spirit said in Chun Hao's mind, "Well, let's try my luck." The aura of the relic should appear at a fixed time every year, but no one has found the entrance. Of course, it's not that simple. If I'm lucky enough to find it, that would be the best. It doesn't matter if I can't find it. The Demon Cloud Mountain itself is very suitable for training, and I can also meet the genius disciples of other countries, Chun Hao said in his mind. As he spoke, he walked to the window to accept the task. Soon, he received the detailed information of the task and a special antique token. What surprised Chun Hao was that this token turned out to be a magical communication rune. As long as he poured his yuan qi into it, the message could be sent back to the Royal New Show Hall at the fastest speed. It was very precious, and only this kind of special task would be issued. After Chun Hao accepted the task, he returned to the dormitory again because of the time limit of the task. Knock, 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 knock. Chun Hao went directly to Helian Wuzi's door and knocked according to the way he and Moyui had agreed on. Hearing the rhythm of the knocking, Helian Wuzi would know that it was Chun Hao. While I'll wait, the sound of water splashing and Helian Wuzi's voice came from the room. Others might not be able to hear it, but Chun Hao's extraordinary hearing could hear it clearly. This girl is taking a bath? Chun Hao frowned slightly, shook his head, and threw away the unhealthy thoughts in his mind. It was human nature to eat and lust. Chun Hao originally had the heart of an adult man, and now as he grew older, his body matured day by day. Facing a stunning girl like Helian Wuzi, it was normal to have some kind of desire. However, the current Chun Hao directly erased any of his thoughts. The land of warmth, the tomb of heroes. He understood this logic. Squeak! A moment later, Helian Wuzi's hair was dripping wet, like a lotus flower emerging from the water. Her beautiful little face carried a trace of redness, after coming out of the bath. She was radiant, and her whole body emitted a faint virgin fragrance as she appeared in front of Chun Hao. "Why are you back?" Hellion Woozy asked, a little surprised. "I took a mission, and it may take 3 months to go back and forth, so I came back to tell you. These 205 elements spirit pills, 100 of which are of the metal attribute, are for Shao Mo to refine and comprehend. 100 of which are of the mist attribute, derived from the water attribute. You can refine and comprehend it yourself. If I don't come back, you can cultivate in seclusion, don't take on missions. Understand? Oh, there's still many 5 elements spirit pills. After I go out, I will go to the Chamber of Commerce in the Great Thousand City to exchange for some elixirs. By the way, I will see if I can help you buy a storage ring. Tell Xiao Mo. I'm leaving." Chen Hao just glanced at Hellion Woozy indifferently, then turned and left. The moment he turned, he said lightly, "Next time, no matter who it is, remember to put on clothes before opening the door." "I'm talking about underwear." "Underwear?" Hellion Woozy was slightly stunned. She looked down at her clothes, but then her little face became hot. She also heard Chun Hao knocking on the door and thought it was urgent, so she put on her clothes at the fastest speed and came out. She didn't think about anything else at all, but who would have thought that even she could see 2 clearly protruding little dots? How could they be exposed? What did they become so big? When she thought of being seen by Chun Hao and being scolded, she was so angry that her delicate body trembled. She waved her little fists at Chun Hao's back and scolded, "You bastard!" Third update, looking for guaranteed monthly votes and subscriptions. The new book is very needed to be put on shelves. Please, everyone, Wu Shan will write with all his might. There is still around 7 o'clock in the evening. Fourth update. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for recommendation and monthly votes. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 99. Under Huang Qi's stunned gaze, Chun Hao returned the 4 secret manuals and headed straight for the exit of the Royal New Show Hall. Walking out of the Imperial family's New Excellence Hall's main door, a gray fog once again appeared in front of his eyes. The main door was clearly beside him, but he could no longer catch a glimpse of its shadow. Traces of a mysterious aura still filled the fog. Even though it was his second time seeing it, Chun Hao was still shocked. After confirming the direction, Chun Hao's figure flashed and disappeared into the fog at lightning speed. The sky was high for the birds to fly, and the sea was wide for the fish to swim. Chun Hao, who walked out of the Royal New Show Hall alone, was like a bird that had been released from its cage. He no longer had any scruples. His figure was as fast as lightning as he advanced through the barren mountain range in the forbidden area. Along the way, many disciples who went out on missions were overtaken by him. After a few hours, he finally arrived at the official road. To reach the destination, I have to pass through nearly half of the Jinyuan Kingdom, which is nearly 10,000 kilometers. At my current speed, I should be able to reach it in about 10 days. I'm not in a hurry. I'll go to the Great Thousand City and prepare first. Chun Hao thought to himself as he sensed the vigorous Yuan Qi and the boundless mental strength in his mind. According to the mission information, the aura of the relic would appear about 20 days later. If there were no accidents along the way, he would definitely be able to make it in time. It didn't matter even if he was a few days late. After all, the aura of the relic would appear for 2 months. Now, Chun Hao should be going out alone for the first time, so he needed to prepare some things. "Brother Chun?" "Hello." As Chun Hao ran on the official road and quickly approached the Great Thousand City, 2 youths, 1 male and 1 female, were walking in front of Chun Hao. They seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll, but their speed was extremely fast. However, they were obviously not as fast as Chun Hao. Just as Chun Hao was about to pass by the 2 of them, one of the youths suddenly spoke up. "Hello." Chun Hao slowed down and cupped his fist slightly. Chun Hao had a deep impression of these 2 people. They were the personal disciples of some big shot, and their cultivations were lower than the Emperor realm. They were the new disciples of Cold Moon Hall, Chun Si and Xiao He. "Are you going to do missions as well?" Xiao He smiled and said, "Originally, when we were advancing to Martial Monarch, we wanted to form a team with the three of you. But you guys often don't leave the house, so we don't want to disturb you." He, Brother Chun, what level of mission did you take? Xiao He and Chun Si were both 15 years old. Other than Chun Hao, they were probably the two youngest people in the new show hall. However, the way they spoke and acted revealed a sense of maturity. "There's nothing we can do. We're too weak. We can only cultivate with all our might." A few senior brothers and senior sisters that I know have accepted a special mission to search for ruins and are chasing after them. By the way, Brother Xiao, I wonder if you are familiar with the Great Thousand City? Chen Hao said, with some reservations. He had deliberately left Fong Qing aside, so naturally, he did not want to associate with others. He said this just in case. A mission to find the ruins? We're the same. Of course, we're familiar with the Great Thousand City. We grew up in the Great Thousand City. The quiet girl, Chun Hao, seemed to be quite curious about Chun Hao. She said, "What's the matter? I want to buy a better sword and a fasting pill." Chun Hao said, "If that's the case, then go directly to the Luoyuan Chamber of Commerce. You'll definitely find something you like." The Luoyuan Chamber of Commerce is the largest cultivator chamber of commerce led by the royal family of the Jinyuan Kingdom and jointly established by many major forces. There's an auction every other day. "Okay, thank you very much. I'll go first. I still have to chase after them." Okay, the two of them said. Although they did not know who Chun Hao's senior brothers and senior sisters were, they could clearly feel that Chun Hao did not have any intention of going with them. Of course, they did not want to go with Chun Hao either. Searching for ruins was not as dangerous as exploring the Xianwang ruins. Their purpose was just to try their luck and gain experience. Chun Hao cupped his fist before his figure suddenly sped up like a wisp of smoke, and it wasn't long before he vanished from their field of vision. Looking at Chun Hao's disappearing figure, Xiao He smiled slightly and said, "This Chun Hao's strength has increased quite quickly." It said that he has already reached the peak of 4th grade martial monarch in Xianhuang Ancient City and has the battle strength of a 5th grade martial monarch. "Yeah, I don't think he's weaker than us." Chen Si said, "We have to work hard too. We're all direct disciples. It'll be embarrassing if we lose." "Okay, don't worry, we won't be weaker than him." The two of them clearly did not know that Chun had already defeated Dongfang Zhan. Otherwise, they would not have said that. Great Thousand City, the Luoyuan Chamber of Commerce was located in the most prosperous area of the city center. It was dazzling and majestic. Dense qi shrouded the surroundings of the huge palace. It was obvious that an extremely powerful restriction had been set up. There were all kinds of people coming in and out. Some of them were dressed like rich people. Some were ordinary people. And there were even more people who wore bamboo hats to cover themselves up. However, without exception, they all emitted a powerful aura. They were obviously cultivators. After entering the entrance, there was a huge palace. This was the reception center of the Luoyuan Chamber of Commerce. In the luxurious and spacious hall, there were beautiful attendants who were dressed elegantly and gracefully. When they saw the guests coming in, they would welcome them. Their sense of service was not inferior to that of a modern city. What was far superior was that these young girls were all cultivators. Moreover, they were all martial masters. At this moment, a figure slowly walked over. He was dressed in black and wore a black bamboo hat. His figure was not tall, but the aura he emitted was clearly that of a martial monarch expert. "Sir, is there anything I can help you with?" An attendant's eyes revealed a trace of surprise and joy. He went up to welcome him, bowed slightly, and said respectfully. The other attendants were slightly envious. It was not that this person was very strong. Based on his aura, they could guess that this person should be a martial monarch expert. This alone was not a big deal. After all, the Luoyuan Chamber of Commerce was the largest chamber of commerce in the Jinyuan Kingdom. They saw countless martial monarchs in a day. There were even many martial monarchs. However, this person was very young. Observing people's expressions was a necessary quality for these attendants. Although this person covered up very well, they could be sure from his exposed hands and body shape. Such a young martial monarch must have a very high status. To be able to receive such a person, it was very likely that they would be able to make a big deal. Do you sell storage rings here? The person asked directly. His voice was indeed very young. This person was none other than Chun Hao in disguise. After all, he needed a lot of pills. For him who had already obtained the 5-element spiritual root, the 5-element spiritual pill could only be treated as an ordinary pill. That would be too wasteful. It was more cost-effective to exchange it for ordinary spiritual herbs. He also bought 3 more storage rings. He gave one each to Helian Woozy and Moue, and used the remaining one for himself. Although he did not need it, he needed to use it to hide his identity. Before he was strong enough, he could not expose the fact that he had obtained the Heaven and Earth Ring and the 5 spiritual swords. He did not have the background of the 3 great clans, so he could only advance step by step. Storage rings? Yes, yes. Sir, please come in. I'll take you to see the manager. Storage rings are more valuable things, the young girl said with a hint of surprise. Okay, Chun Hao replied. Passing through the luxurious hall, Chun Hao walked into the Chamber of Commerce under the guidance of the young female attendant. A dazzling array of weapons, ores, and some unknown strange items were placed on the crystal counters. Countless people were choosing among them. Such popularity was indeed not something an ordinary Chamber of Commerce could compare to. Chun Hao followed the attendant and looked around to see if there was anything that interested him. The treasure-hunting sword spirit in his mind also sensed the aura around him. Sir, please wait here for a moment. I'll call the manager, okay? Chun Hao replied and casually browsed through the weapons placed beside him. A few flying daggers fell into Chun Hao's eyes. Sir, what do you need? The attendant at the counter saw Chun Hao's gaze and immediately said respectfully, Is this a flying dagger? You can take a look. It's made by a master craftsman. The material is iron essence that has been tempered thousands of times. It's hard and extremely sharp. The price is also moderate. It only costs 10 level 6 spiritual herbs or elixirs. So expensive? Chun Hao took the flying dagger from the attendant and said with a little surprise, Little brother, this is not expensive. The items in our Luoyuan Chamber of Commerce are not ordinary items. I guarantee that you will get your money's worth. The flying dagger was as thin as a cicada's wing and exuded a cold aura. Purely based on the feeling, it was indeed much better than the small dagger that his father had given him. Moreover, it was more suitable as a hidden weapon. Wow! Just as Chun Hao was holding the flying dagger and sizing it up, the surrounding crowd suddenly became restless. Chun Hao also hurriedly turned his head to look. Hello, Director Yin. Director Yin, you're getting more and more beautiful. A stunning figure appeared in front of Chun Hao's eyes. Wearing a purple long dress, her skin was whiter than snow. Her entire body exuded a graceful and luxurious luster. The slightly low neckline made her exposed, jade-like neck look particularly attractive. The fitting long dress showed off her graceful and enchanting, exquisite figure. Her slender waist was like a swaying willow branch. Oval face, willow leaf eyebrows, red phoenix eyes, cherry lips. Her exquisite appearance revealed a graceful and luxurious elegance. It also contained a natural charm. Purely looking at this woman's appearance, she was at most 20 years old. However, her extremely enchanting figure and dressing exuded a more mature charm. She did not have the slightest bit of youthfulness of a young girl. The woman smiled faintly and frequently nodded in response to the greetings of the crowd. She seemed to be used to the burning gazes. Following a young female attendant, she walked straight towards Chun Hao. Sir, this is our Director Yin. When the young female attendant brought the woman to Chun Hao's side, she introduced her. Chun Hao's eyes, which were hidden behind the veil, narrowed slightly. Even he did not expect that the so-called director would be such an enchanting woman. In his heart, he could not help but admire the business acumen of the Luoyuan Chamber of Commerce. With such a stunning woman, most men would be too embarrassed to bargain. They would even puff themselves up at their own cost. Fourth update, 12,000 plus outburst has ended. Brothers and sisters, please support and subscribe. Those who have guaranteed monthly votes, please also vote for Dark Mountain. The new book on the shelves needs everyone's encouragement. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.